Sure, but you're going to be the one stuck with those 5 kids. I'm taking the house, Daniel said, his voice dripping with a smugness that sent shivers down my spine. His words were a slap in the face, a stark reminder of how far we had drifted from the love that once seemed unbreakable. I took a deep breath, steadying my shaking hands. You think this is just about the house, Daniel? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He shrugged, a smirk playing on his lips. What else is there, Laura? You'll crawl back eventually. You need me. That was Daniel, arrogant, dismissive, and utterly blind to the wreckage of our family that lay at his feet. Our journey together, which had begun with laughter and dreams in the corridors of college, had twisted into this bitter, unrecognizable end. You've always underestimated me, I said quietly, my mind made up. But not anymore. I'm filing for divorce, Daniel. And I'm taking the kids. His laughter was cruel, a sound that echoed in the empty spaces of our once happy home. Divorce? You think you can manage without me? Go ahead, try. But remember, I'm keeping the house, and without my money, good luck surviving. I looked into his eyes, searching for a trace of the man I had fallen in love with, but all I saw was a stranger, a cold, heartless stranger. I turned away, my heart heavy, but my decision firm. You'll see, Daniel. You'll see what life is like without us, and when you do, don't come looking for me. With those words, I left the room, leaving behind the shattered remains of what was once my life. The kids were still asleep, unaware of the storm that was about to change our lives forever. As I packed a few essentials, my mind raced with plans and possibilities. I had to be strong, not just for myself, but for the 5 beautiful reasons sleeping in their rooms. They deserved a life free from the shadow of their father's indifference and cruelty. I glanced back one last time at the home that had held so many dreams and whispered a goodbye to a past that could never be reclaimed. Stepping out into the crisp morning air, I felt a sense of freedom, tinged with fear and uncertainty. But above all, there was hope. A fragile, flickering hope that from the ashes of our broken family, something new and beautiful could arise. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to fight, ready to rebuild, and ready to show Daniel that his arrogance would be his downfall. This wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I was the author of my own destiny. The day I met Daniel at college, he was the epitome of charm and wit. His laughter was infectious, and his promises were like a beacon of hope. We were young, in love, and naive enough to believe that love was all we needed. Fast forward to our married life, things started to change slowly yet painfully. The once attentive and caring Daniel became distant, his smiles replaced by frowns, and his warm embraces turned cold. It hit me hardest after the birth of our twins, Ellie and Ethan. I still remember holding them in my arms, their tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and looking up to see Daniel standing at the door, his expression unreadable. Why won't you hold them? I asked, my voice a mix of bewilderment and hope. They are your children, Daniel. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. I just don't know how to handle them. I tried to understand, to believe that it was just a phase, that soon he would be the doting father I had imagined he would be. But as days turned to months, the distance only grew. When I brought up the idea of having another child, hoping it might bridge the gap between us, his response was lukewarm. Sure, if that's what you want. But it was never what he wanted, was it? The man who once dreamed of a big, happy family was now a shadow of his former self, buried under excuses and avoidance. Our life became a cycle of unmet expectations and silent dinners. The laughter and love that once filled our home were replaced by a deafening silence, broken only by the children's laughter, a sound that seemed to alienate Daniel even more. Why don't you spend time with the kids? I asked one evening, my voice a mere whisper, heavy with unshed tears. He didn't even look up from his phone. I'm busy, Laura. You know how it is. But I didn't know. I didn't understand how the man I loved could turn his back on his own flesh and blood. How he could retreat into a shell, leaving me to juggle the responsibilities of 5 young lives alone. The more I tried to reach out, the more he pulled away, burying himself in work, and on the rare occasions he was home, he was like a ghost. Present in body, but absent in every way that mattered. As I lay in bed that night, the moon casting a pale light across the room, I realized the painful truth. The Daniel I fell in love with was gone, replaced by a stranger I no longer recognized, a stranger who wore the mask of my husband but whose eyes were void of the warmth and love that had once drawn me to him. I knew then that I had to make a choice, not just for myself, but for Ellie, Ethan, and the triplets. I had to step out of the shadow of a broken marriage and into the light of a new beginning. A beginning where I was strong, independent, and free from the chains of disappointment and unfulfilled promises. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, I made a silent vow. I would not let Daniel's indifference break me. I would rise from the ashes of our failed marriage and build a life of happiness and love for my children and myself. A life where we were no longer just surviving, but thriving. Living with Daniel had become like navigating a minefield, each step uncertain and fraught with the risk of emotional detonation. The house, once a symbol of our shared dreams, had become a prison of my frustrations and his indifference. "Mom, why doesn't Daddy play with us?" Ellie's innocent question one evening cut through me. I looked into her curious eyes, her twin brother Ethan nodding along, seeking an answer I didn't have. I knelt down, enveloping them in a hug, trying to shield them from the harsh reality. "Daddy's just very busy, sweethearts. But he loves you very much," I lied, my heart aching with the falsehood. The truth was Daniel had become a stranger not only to me, but to our children as well. His presence at home was like a passing shadow, cold and fleeting. The man who once dreamt of a bustling, joyful household now seemed burdened by the very existence of his own family. Our triplets, barely 2 years old, had quickly learned to rely solely on me. The lack of paternal affection had become their normal, and it pained me to see the void in their young lives. "Daniel, you need to spend time with your children. They hardly know you," I confronted him one night, the words spilling out in a mix of frustration and desperation. He scoffed, flipping through channels on the TV. "What's the point? They have you. Isn't that enough?" His dismissive tone stung, but it was the underlying implication that wounded me deeply. In his eyes, I was just the caretaker, a background fixture in the narrative of his life. The financial strain only added to the growing chasm between us. Daniel's salary was decent, but with his increasing detachment, he became more secretive about our finances. I remember stumbling upon a credit card bill, hidden beneath a pile of papers. The numbers danced before my eyes, countless transactions, none of which were for the family. It was as if Daniel was living a separate life, one where we didn't exist. "Daniel, we need to talk about our finances. The kids' expenses are mounting, and we can't keep up like this," I said one evening, mustering all the courage I had. He barely glanced at me, his eyes glued to his phone. "Why? You managing fine, aren't you? Just cut back on whatever you're wasting money on." His words were like a slap in the face. Wasting money? On what? The children's needs? Food? The basic necessities of life? The more I tried to bridge the gap, the more he retreated into his shell, leaving me alone to bear the weight of our crumbling world. The loneliness was crushing, but it was the helplessness that consumed me. The feeling of being trapped in a loveless marriage, fighting a losing battle for the sake of my children. But amidst the despair, a fire was kindling within me, a fire of defiance, a determination to no longer be a silent sufferer in the narrative Daniel had written for us. I was ready to rewrite our story, one where the children and I were not just mere characters in the background, but the protagonists of our own lives. And as I tucked my children into bed that night, whispering stories of love and hope, I knew the time had come. The time to step out of the shadows and into the light. The time to reclaim our lives from the clutches of a man who had forgotten the meaning of family. The day I decided to break free from Daniel's grasp, I felt a mix of fear and liberation. The morning air was crisp, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere within our home. As I prepared breakfast, Daniel sauntered into the kitchen, his demeanor as cold as ever. "What's this?" he sneered, looking at the simple meal I had put together. "It's breakfast," I replied, my voice calm but firm. He scoffed, pushing the plate away. "This is what I get after working all day? You can't even cook a decent meal?" I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to retaliate. For years, I had tolerated his belittling remarks, his disregard for our family, but not anymore. "Daniel, the kids need new clothes, and the school fees are due. We need to discuss our finances, I ventured, hoping for a rational conversation. He rolled his eyes, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his hand. Your job is to take care of the house and the kids. I do my part. Don't expect more. That was the moment I realized nothing would ever change. Daniel would never see us as his priority. His family was just a burden, an inconvenience in his self-centered world. Later that day, as I watched the children play, their laughter a bittersweet sound, I knew I had to take a stand. For them, for me. Daniel, we need to talk. This can't go on, I said when he finally returned home that evening. He looked at me, a sneer forming on his lips. What now, Laura? Tired of your comfortable life? His words ignited something within me. Comfortable? You call this comfortable? Your children barely know you, and you think throwing money at us is enough? He laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Oh, please, you've had it easy. Don't start playing the victim now. His lack of empathy, his sheer arrogance was staggering. It's not about being a victim, Daniel. It's about our family. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? For a moment, he looked taken aback, as if the idea of anyone challenging him was unthinkable. You think you can manage without me? Go ahead, try, he challenged, his voice laced with contempt. I looked him in the eye, my resolve strengthening. I can, and I will. I'm filing for divorce, Daniel. I refuse to let you drag me and the children down any longer. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by his usual arrogance. Divorce? Fine. But remember, I'm keeping the house, and good luck with the kids on your own. As he walked away, a sense of determination washed over me. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready to fight for a better future, for a life where my children and I were more than just afterthoughts in someone else's story. I tucked the children into bed that night, their innocent faces a reminder of the battle ahead. But I was ready to break free from the chains of a loveless marriage and start anew, ready to show Daniel that his neglect and cruelty would be his undoing. The day I started the divorce proceedings, I felt a mix of trepidation and resolve. As I sat in the lawyer's office, outlining the years of neglect and emotional abandonment, the weight of my decision sank in. Mrs. Williams, we'll ensure you get what you deserve in this settlement. Your children's well-being is our priority, the lawyer assured me. I nodded, feeling a sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. When I informed Daniel about the divorce, his reaction was predictably dismissive. Divorce? You think you can handle everything on your own? This will be amusing. His words no longer hurt me. Instead, they fueled my determination to build a better future for myself and my children. As the legal battle ensued, Daniel's true colors became even more apparent. He was more concerned about his finances and the house than the emotional trauma he had inflicted on our family. You're trying to rob me of everything, Laura. That house is mine. I worked for it, he shouted during one of our mediated sessions. I looked at him, my resolve unwavering. This isn't about the house, Daniel. It's about our children, their future. But you wouldn't understand that. The legal process was draining, both emotionally and financially. But with each passing day, my resolve strengthened. I was fighting for justice, for recognition of the years I had spent in the shadow of a man who valued his ego more than his family. During the final hearing, Daniel's arrogance was on full display. You think you've won, Laura? You'll come crawling back. You can't survive without me. But he was wrong. I had survived, and I would continue to do so. The court's judgment was in my favor, granting me custody of the children and a fair settlement. As I walked out of the courtroom, a sense of liberation washed over me. I had stood up to the man who had tried to diminish my worth, and I had emerged victorious. That evening, as I sat with my children, their laughter filling our modest but warm home, I knew I had made the right decision. We were starting a new chapter, one of hope and new beginnings. Daniel's attempts to intimidate me had failed. He had underestimated my strength, my resilience. And now, he was the one left to grapple with the consequences of his actions. I looked at my children, their faces beaming with happiness, and I knew we would be okay. We had each other, and that was all that mattered. The path to liberation had been long and fraught with challenges, but I had walked it with my head held high. And as I put my children to bed that night, I whispered a promise to them and to myself. We would never be victims of Daniel's cruelty again. We were free, and we would thrive. The days following the divorce were a blend of relief and rebuilding. My sister Emily became my rock during this tumultuous time. Moving in with her was a decision born out of necessity, but it blossomed into a period of healing and growth for me and the children. "Laura, you're stronger than you realize," Emily said one evening as we sat in her cozy living room, the kids asleep in the next room. Her words were a balm to my weary soul. "I had to be, for the kids," I replied, my voice tinged with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. The practical aspects of starting over were daunting. The financial settlement from the divorce was a relief, but it was the emotional scars that were harder to heal. Emily's support was invaluable. She was more than just a sister. She was a mentor, a friend. Daniel's absence became more pronounced in the kids' lives, but we filled the void with love and laughter. Emily's bond with the children grew each day, her natural maternal instinct a comfort to their wounded hearts. I found a job at a local library, a place that offered not just employment, but a sanctuary of sorts. The routine, the sense of purpose, was therapeutic. Slowly, I was reclaiming my identity, no longer just Daniel's wife or the mother of his children, but Laura, strong, independent, and resilient. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. Daniel's shadow loomed over our lives in unexpected ways. He tried to worm his way back into our lives, his messages oscillating between apologies and accusations. "You'll regret this, Laura. You and the kids need me," he texted one night, his words a stark reminder of the manipulation I had escaped. I didn't respond. Emily's advice echoed in my mind. "Don't let him back in, Laura. You've come too far." Her words were my anchor, keeping me steady in the face of Daniel's persistent attempts to unsettle me. The children adjusted to our new life with remarkable resilience. Their laughter filled Emily's home, turning it into a haven of hope and new beginnings. We had our moments of struggle, of course, but we faced them together as a family. As the weeks turned into months, I realized the divorce had not just been the end of a painful chapter, but the start of a new narrative. A narrative where I was the author, where my children and I were the main characters, charting a course towards a future filled with possibility. Emily and I would often sit on her porch after the kids were asleep, talking about life, dreams, and the future. In those quiet moments, I found a peace I hadn't known in years. "You've done it, Laura," Emily would say, her eyes shining with pride. "You've built a new life for yourself and the kids." And she was right. Against all odds, we had built something beautiful from the ashes of my broken marriage. We were no longer just surviving, we were thriving. Months had passed since the divorce, and life had settled into a new rhythm. However, the peace was abruptly shattered one evening by an unexpected call from Daniel. I hesitated as I saw his name flash on the screen. Taking a deep breath, I answered, bracing myself for what was to come. "What do you want, Daniel?" His voice was a mix of desperation and arrogance. "Laura, you need to come back. The kids need a father." I couldn't help but scoff. "They have been doing just fine without you." "You're turning them against me," he accused, his voice rising in anger. "No, Daniel, you did that all by yourself," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I've changed, Laura. I realize my mistakes now. Let's start over," he pleaded, but his words rang hollow. I felt a surge of anger and disbelief. "Start over? After everything you've done? You're delusional, Daniel." There was a pause on the line, and when he spoke again, his tone had changed. "You'll regret this, Laura. You can't keep me away from my kids forever." I clenched my phone, feeling a mix of anger and determination. "Watch me, Daniel. I will do whatever it takes to protect them from you." The call ended with a click, leaving me shaken but resolute. I knew Daniel's threats were not to be taken lightly, but I was no longer the woman who had tolerated his neglect and abuse. In the weeks that followed, Daniel's attempts to worm his way back into our lives intensified. He tried to sway the children with gifts, to charm Emily with false apologies, but we stood firm. Then came the day when I received a letter from Daniel's lawyer, demanding visitation rights. It was a move I had anticipated, yet it filled me with dread. I met with my lawyer, my resolve unwavering. I won't let him near the kids. He's a toxic influence. "We'll fight this, Laura," my lawyer assured me. "You have a strong case." The ensuing legal battle was draining, but I was fighting for something far more important than my own well-being. I was fighting for my children's future. As I sat in the courtroom listening to Daniel's lawyer paint him as a reformed man, a devoted father, I felt a surge of anger. He was playing the victim, twisting the narrative to suit his agenda. But the evidence was on my side. The years of neglect, the emotional trauma he had inflicted, spoke louder than his empty words. The judge's verdict was a vindication of all we had endured. Daniel's request for visitation was denied, with the judge citing concerns for the children's emotional well-being. As I walked out of the courtroom, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I had stood up to Daniel not just for myself, but for my children. I had shown them the strength of standing up to injustice, to fight for what is right. We were free from Daniel's shadow, finally. The road ahead would have its challenges, but we were ready to face them together. As I tucked the kids into bed that night, I knew we had turned a page. We were no longer bound by the chains of the past. We were moving forward, towards a future filled with hope and promise. And as I turned off the lights, a sense of peace settled over me. We were safe, we were together, and we were home.
As I sat at my parents' Thanksgiving table, surrounded by the familiar sights of my childhood home, I felt a rare calm. These visits, now that I was 60, provided a peaceful escape from the tense atmosphere at my own house. My daughter Emma chatted happily with her grandmother, their voices filling the room with joy. It was a stark difference from the quiet, strained conversations I often had with Richard, my husband. Suddenly, my phone buzzed loudly, interrupting the warmth of the moment. Richard's name appeared on the screen, instantly making me uneasy. Taking a deep breath, I excused myself from the table. "Sorry, it's Richard. I'll just take this in the kitchen." But as I stood up, I accidentally activated the speakerphone. "Hey Elaine, enjoying yourself there?" "Well, don't bother coming back." Richard's voice sounded oddly cheerful, echoing through the room. I froze, holding the phone as his words hung in the air. "What do you mean, Richard?" "Oh, I've decided it's time for a change. I've moved Emma's stuff into the house. There's no room for you anymore." The room fell into silence. Emma dropped her fork with a loud clatter, her eyes wide in disbelief. "Richard, what are you talking about?" My voice trembled as I spoke, my heart racing. "It's simple. Emma doesn't want to come home because of you. Without you around, she can live the life she deserves, like when she was younger. So you need to leave." Emma stood up suddenly, her face flushing with anger. "Dad, what is going on?" "Stay out of this, Emma." Richard's voice cut her off, icy and firm. "This is between me and your mother." My cheeks burned with a mix of shame and anger. "You want me to leave our home just like that?" "Yeah, find some shelter or whatever. It's not my problem." The call ended abruptly, leaving a heavy silence. My mother reached out, her hand trembling. "Elaine, honey." Before she could finish, Emma burst into bitter laughter. "He's lost it, Grandma. Completely lost it." Inside, I was a whirlwind of emotions, shame, anger, and a strange feeling of freedom. He better be ready. I thought to myself, this isn't the end, it's just the beginning. That night, lying in my childhood bed with moonlight casting shadows, memories flooded back. Richard and I hadn't always been distant and cold. There was a time when his eyes held warmth and his touch felt safe. I met Richard when I was in my late 20s. He was charming, confident, and seemed to have all the answers. His charisma drew me in, and within a year of meeting, we were married. A whirlwind romance that felt like a fairy tale. But the fairy tale began to crack soon after Emma was born. Richard adored our daughter, but as his love for her grew, his feelings towards me seemed to diminish. It was as if there was only room in his heart for one person. "Elaine, can't you see? You're suffocating her. Give her space," he would scold. Whenever I tried to be part of Emma's life, his words hurt, though I thought he was just being an overly protective father. As Emma grew older, Richard's resentment towards me deepened. The man who once cherished me now barely acknowledged my existence, except to criticize. "Why can't you be more like Emma? She's only 10 and already so independent," he'd sneer. I remember the night Emma, at 15, won a school award. We were supposed to celebrate together as a family, but Richard turned it into a lecture. "Elaine, why can't you achieve anything like our daughter? You're wasting your life." His words pierced like daggers. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling years of his disdain weighing on me. It wasn't just his words, it was the dismissive looks, the heavy sighs, the way he'd turn away when I entered a room. I had become invisible and insignificant in my own home. That night, lying in the silence, something stirred inside me. Richard's callousness, his disregard for our life together, it ignited a determination in me. I refused to let him erase me from my own story. Turning on my side, I closed my eyes, but sleep eluded me. The shadows seemed to whisper, urging me to rise up, to reclaim myself. And deep down, I knew I was ready to take that step. The next morning, I woke up with a newfound clarity I hadn't felt in years. During breakfast, Mom tried to talk about Richard's call, but I changed the subject. I wasn't ready to confront that issue just yet, and Emma sensed my hesitation and didn't push. As we tidied up, my mind wandered back to the years with Richard. His controlling behavior wasn't limited to our daughter. It permeated every part of our lives, tightening like a vice around my freedom. "Elaine, don't stay late at work. You need to be home to cook," he would insist, dismissing my job at the library that I loved. His rules were unpredictable and meant to keep me off balance. If I wore something he didn't like, he'd scoff. Trying to impress someone, focus on being a better wife and mother. Even my friendships weren't safe. "You spend too much time with Linda Sheck, a bad influence," he once said, cutting through years of friendship. But it wasn't just the control, it was the humiliation at social events. He'd undermine me with fake compliments, often in front of Emma. "Elaine tries her best, but you know she's not the brightest bulb," he'd laugh, his words a painful reminder of his contempt. Emma witnessed it all. At first she tried to defend me, but Richard's influence was overpowering. "Mom, just ignore him," she'd whisper, her eyes filled with frustration. I couldn't forget the day Emma left for college. Richard glowed with pride, yet there was a coldness in his gaze when he looked at me. "See, Elaine, this is what happens when you raise a child right. She's not like you, thank God." Those words cut deeper than anything, implying I had no role in our daughter's upbringing, that my years of love and sacrifice were worthless. As these memories swirled in my mind, a simmering anger rose within me. Enough was enough. I wouldn't let Richard control my life any longer. The phone call had been the final straw. It was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. I looked at Emma, seeing her determination reflected back at me. "Emma, there's something important I need to do when we get home. It's going to change everything, but I need you to trust me." Emma nodded firmly. "I'm with you, Mom." Completely. The drive back was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts, knowing we were heading towards a crucial confrontation with Richard. Once home, I excused myself to my room under the guise of unpacking, but really to make a call that would set everything in motion. I dialed the number of a divorce attorney I had discreetly noted down months ago. My hands trembled as the call connected. "Hello, this is Elaine Richardson. I need to discuss filing for divorce." Mr. Adams, the lawyer, was calm and understanding. "I can help you through this, Mrs. Richardson. It sounds like you're dealing with a challenging situation." As I recounted Richard's behavior over the years, Mr. Adams listened attentively. "We can file for divorce on grounds of emotional abuse. It seems like you have a strong case." Feeling empowered, I responded firmly, "I'm proceeding with this, and I want him to face consequences both legally and financially." Mr. Adams reassured me, "We'll work to ensure you receive what you're entitled to." After the call, a mix of fear and exhilaration washed over me. For the first time in years, I was taking charge of my life. Later that evening, Richard returned home, his demeanor smug and victorious. "Back so soon. Realize you have nowhere else to go." His words stung, but I stood my ground. "I went to my parents' house, Richard. Remember the place you practically forced me into?" He scoffed. "I did us a favor. Emma and I are better off without you." "That's where you're mistaken," I said firmly. "Emma isn't a pawn in your games, and I'm not your captive anymore." Richard's face twisted in anger. "What nonsense are you talking? You think you can survive without me?" Meeting his gaze, my resolve remained steady. "Watch me." Emma entered the room, her expression showing determination. "Dad, you've crossed a line. Mom doesn't deserve this." Richard sneered. "Oh, now you're on her side? I thought you understood, Emma. Your mother is worthless." Emma's eyes flashed with anger. "No, Dad. The only worthless thing here is your cruelty. We're done living under your control." As we stood together against Richard's hostility, I knew we had reached a turning point. The battle lines were drawn, and I was prepared to fight for my freedom. The morning after our confrontation, the atmosphere in the house felt tense. Richard's usual arrogance was heightened, as if he was challenging us to defy him. While making breakfast, my hands trembled slightly, but my determination held strong. At the table, Richard broke the silence with his usual condescension. "So, Elaine, have you finally realized your place? Ready to beg for forgiveness?" I kept my voice steady. "There's no need for me to beg, Richard. It's you who should be reflecting on your actions." He laughed bitterly. "You've always been out of touch, Elaine, but this is a new low." Emma, who had been quiet until then, spoke up firmly. "Dad, this isn't a joke. Mom is serious about filing for divorce." Richard's face twisted through confusion, disbelief, and then erupted into anger. "Divorce? You think you can just walk away from me after everything I've done for this family?" "It's because of what you've done," I interjected, my voice firm. "Years of belittling, controlling, and humiliating me. I won't tolerate it any longer." Richard slammed his fist on the table, his face flushed with rage. "I built this family. Without me, you're nothing." Emma stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. "You didn't build this family, Dad. You've torn it apart. And Mom isn't just something. You've treated her like nothing." His eyes darted between us, a wild intensity growing. "You're ganging up on me, your own husband, your own father." "This isn't about sides, Richard," I said evenly, the turmoil churned inside me. "What you've done is unforgivable." Richard's bitter laugh filled the room. "You think you can leave and everything will be fine. You have no clue what's coming." I met his gaze firmly. "I know exactly what I'm facing, freedom from you." Emma stood beside me, resolute. "We're done with your control, Dad. It's over." Richard abruptly stood, his chair crashing behind him. "You'll regret this, both of you. You have no idea what I'm capable of." As he stormed out, the tension he left behind was suffocating. But in that tension, there was also a profound sense of liberation. The battle had begun, and I was ready to fight for my freedom, my dignity, and my daughter's future. The days after our confrontation with Richard were a whirlwind of activity. I met with Mr. Adams multiple times, meticulously planning the divorce proceedings. "We'll ensure you receive what's rightfully yours, Elaine, both financially and legally," Mr. Adams assured me. Richard's reaction to the divorce papers was explosive. He barged into the house one evening, papers in hand, his face a mask of rage. "You're really going through with this? Do you even understand what you're doing, Elaine?" I faced him calmly, despite my inner turmoil. "Yes, Richard, I do. For the first time in years, I'm making a decision for myself." Richard laughed mockingly. "You really believe you can survive without me? You're nothing without my money, my support." "I'm not afraid of being on my own, Richard. I'm more afraid of spending another day under the same roof as you," I replied firmly. Emma, hearing the argument, came downstairs. "What's going on?" "Your mother has lost her mind," Richard sneered. "She thinks she can just take half of everything I've worked hard for." "It's not just what you've earned, Dad. It's what Mom has endured all these years. She deserves every penny and more." Emma shot back. Richard's gaze hardened. "Don't be naive, Emma. This will destroy us all." "No, Dad, it will liberate us, especially Mom." As the days stretched into weeks, our home became a tense, silent battlefield. Richard relocated to the guest room, his presence casting a heavy shadow over everything. Despite his attempts to sway me, my decision was resolute. The day of our first court hearing arrived. Sitting in the courtroom, waiting for proceedings to commence, I felt an unusual calmness wash over me. I knew deep down that I was making the right choice, not just for myself, but for Emma too. Richard, however, appeared visibly nervous. When his lawyer broached the topic of a settlement, a small smile crept onto my face. Richard, who had always prided himself on control, was now at the mercy of the legal system. As the judge reviewed our case, Richard grew visibly paler. When the judge turned to me and asked if I wished to add anything, I took a steadying breath. "Your Honor, for years I endured emotional abuse and manipulation at the hands of my husband. I seek not vengeance, but justice, for myself and for my daughter." The judge nodded solemnly. "I understand, Mrs. Richardson. This court will ensure a fair and just resolution." Leaving the courtroom, I caught Richard's defeated expression. It was enough for me to know that while the battle wasn't over, I had won this initial round. I was prepared for whatever lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, my life felt like it was constantly under scrutiny, analyzed by lawyers and the court. But with each passing day, I felt stronger, more in control of my own destiny. Richard's attempts to intimidate me grew more desperate and less effective over time. The final court hearing became a day I both dreaded and eagerly awaited. As Richard and I sat across from each other in the courtroom, I couldn't help but reflect on the man I once loved, now a stranger filled with bitterness. The judge's voice was unwavering as he delivered the verdict. The court rules in favor of Mrs. Richardson. Mr. Richardson, you are obligated to pay alimony and half of your assets. Richard's face twisted in shock and anger. He abruptly stood up, his chair crashing to the ground. This is ridiculous. She doesn't deserve a single penny. Mr. Richardson, control yourself, the judge admonished firmly. The court's decision is final. As we exited the courtroom, Richard's parting words dripped with venom. You'll regret this, Elaine. You think you've won, but you haven't seen the end of me. But I no longer feared him. His once cutting words now sounded hollow and powerless. Over the following months, I secured a small apartment near Emma's place. I began a new job at a local library, a place that always brought me solace. The alimony from Richard provided me with a financial independence I hadn't known in years. Emma and I grew closer, our relationship no longer overshadowed by Richard's presence. She flourished in her career and personal life, a stark contrast to the fearful young woman she once was. As for Richard, the last I heard, he was leading a diminished life, his pride and finances greatly reduced. His attempts to reconnect with Emma and me were met with silence. The man who once wielded so much power over us now exists only as a memory, a faint echo of the past. Often, I sit on my balcony with a cup of tea, gazing out at the tranquil neighborhood. Here, I found a sense of peace and purpose that eluded me for so long. Emma visits frequently, and we share conversations about everything and nothing. Our bond, forged in adversity, has grown unbreakable. Looking ahead, I face the future with hope and a profound sense of freedom. Emerging from the shadows of my past, I've grown stronger and more resilient. I've come to understand that sometimes the most challenging battles lead to the greatest triumphs. As for Richard, he remains nothing more than a distant echo, a reminder of a life I once lived and the strength I discovered in leaving it behind.
My name is Alina. I'm 23 years old and in my last year of college, aiming to become a journalist. But today, instead of looking forward to graduation, I'm stuck in a terrible situation. We just buried my dad less than a day ago. My dad, Martin, was always traveling for work, but he still made me feel loved. Now, the house feels so empty without him. It's a constant reminder of the gap he left behind. As I stand in the entrance of our home, still feeling numb from the funeral, my mom, Claudia, and my sister, Victoria, quickly share their plans. Their words hit me hard, like a loud, sad bell marking the end of our family's togetherness. We're going to sell this house, Claudia says, her eyes cold despite her pretending to be sad. Start looking for a new place, Elena. You need to move out soon. I can hardly believe what I'm hearing. Before I can even process my dad's death, my mom and sister are already thinking about money and what they can gain from it. It feels like a huge betrayal. You don't think you're entitled to anything, do you? Victoria taunts, with her boyfriend, Jan, laughing beside her. Their cruel amusement makes me furious. I shouldn't be hearing these words, especially now when the pain is so fresh. I never understood their greed and obsession with wealth and appearances. I was always the odd one out in the family, too serious and studious. Elena the dreamer, they used to mock. And now, faced with their scheming, all the years of indifference and mockery boil over. You're the worst, I shout, unable to hold back my anger. I'm done with this. I'm done with all of you. The bell rings, cutting through my outburst. Annoyed at the interruption, I wipe away my angry tears and open the door. A man in a dark suit stands there, holding a briefcase, and his face looks vaguely familiar. My condolences, he says solemnly. May I come in? Who is this stranger, showing up at the worst possible time with such a serious tone? I'm not ready to deal with anyone else right now, but something in his eyes tells me this isn't just a courtesy visit. I step aside and let him in, wondering what this means for our already fragile family. The echo of my father's laughter used to fill our home, softening the sting of my mother and sister's harsh words. Now the walls seem to close in on me, mixing memories of their hurtful comments with the emptiness his death has left. I always found comfort in my studies, hoping they would lead me to a meaningful life, away from the shallow desires that drove Claudia and Victoria. But as I sit at the dining table, it's hard to focus on anything but the void Martin's passing has created. Silent meals have become the new normal since Dad got sick and passed away. Victoria is always on her phone, and Claudia flips through high-fashion magazines, completely detached from our reality. Their latest plan to sell our home and leave me behind was the final blow to our family bonds. They seemed so eager to chase their dreams of luxury condos and designer lives that nothing else mattered. Dad had been our anchor, and I'd hoped for at least a semblance of unity after he was gone. But now, seeing their blatant opportunism, the illusion of family was shattered, and something inside me snapped. I was tired of being the outsider, the one who cared. I was ready to walk away from it all. Lost in these thoughts, the doorbell rings, a sound that now only means more disruption and bad news. At the door stands a man from my father's past, someone whose ties to our family had faded over time. "Good evening," he greets me. "I need to speak with you about your father's affairs." His formal tone feels out of place in our messy living room, a stark reminder of our family's discord. I nod and gesture for him to sit down. Claudia and Victoria peek out from the kitchen, their curious faces showing irritation. The man pulls out a stack of papers from his briefcase, his expression serious. "I'm Mr. Adams, your father's attorney. He entrusted me with his will and some final instructions," he explains, adjusting his glasses with a seriousness that hints at significant news. Claudia leans forward, visibly intrigued, while Victoria tries to appear nonchalant but stays close by. As Mr. Adams prepares to speak, I steel myself for what's coming next, unsure of the impact it will have but certain our family dynamics are on the brink of change once again. The room fills with tension as Mr. Adams clears his throat and unfolds the document containing my father Martin's final wishes. Claudia and Victoria lean forward eagerly, their attempts at composure slipping since his passing. "In accordance with your father's wishes," Mr. Adams begins, "I am here to read the will and begin the process of carrying out his instructions." His gaze moves between each of us, perhaps assessing our readiness for what he's about to reveal. I can't shake a sense of dread. Years of living under my mother and sister's expectations had conditioned me to expect little and prepare for disappointment. Yet as the attorney starts to speak, it becomes clear that our expectations are about to be upended. "To my daughter Elena, I leave the entirety of my estate, including the family home and all accumulated savings and investments." The room falls into a hushed silence, broken only by the soft shuffle of papers and the steady tick-tock of the grandfather clock. Mr. Adams continues reading, but his words barely register with me. All I can hear is the pounding of my heart and a buzzing in my ears. It can't be right. There must be some mistake. Me? I manage to stammer, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. But why? Victoria pushes her chair back abruptly, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and anger. Claudia, equally stunned, sits frozen, her mouth opening and closing silently. Jen, who had been quietly lingering in the background, steps forward as if to comfort or perhaps restrain Victoria. "This has to be some kind of joke, right?" Jan demands, but Mr. Adams only solemnly shakes his head. "There's no mistake," he assures us. Martin was very clear in his wishes. He believed that Elena, with her principles and dedication, would best honor his legacy and manage his assets responsibly. Claudia finds her voice, her disbelief turning to anger. "But what about us?" she demands sharply, her voice shaking with fury. "Are we supposed to get nothing while she gets everything?" The question lingers in the air, thick with resentment from my mother and sister. I'm speechless, caught between the weight of this unexpected responsibility and the hurt of their obvious greed. Mr. Adams looks at me. Martin had his reasons, which he believed would become clear in time. Right now, we need to discuss the next steps and the details of the estate. As Mr. Adams speaks, I can't help but wonder what my father saw in me, what trust he had placed in my hands, and how I could ever live up to it amidst the wreckage of our family unity. The silence following Mr. Adams's revelation feels as heavy as the sorrow I felt at my father's funeral. Claudia and Victoria's anger fills the room, crashing against my shock like relentless waves against a cliff. For a moment, no one says anything. We're frozen in place, the weight of my father's will slicing through the air like a chill wind. "My reasons," Mr. Adams continues, addressing me directly, "are explained in a personal letter your father left for you, Elena. I am to give it to you after we finish here." Victoria's voice breaks the silence. "There must be some mistake," she protests, her words echoing off the walls, igniting a conflict I have no desire to engage in. Jan puts a hand on her shoulder, trying to calm her, but her determination remains unyielding. How can she just inherit everything? Victoria's tone rises sharply, incredulous. "And what about us? Are we suddenly strangers he's decided to abandon after everything we've done for him?" She wields her words like a weapon, her disbelief escalating into a crescendo of frustration. Claudia's shocked facade gives way to anger. "Exactly. There must be some provision for this, some oversight or option to challenge it. This is absurd. Her hands tighten on the chair's arms, her knuckles turning white. I finally speak up, my voice weak even to my own ears. I don't understand. Why would Dad do this? What was he thinking? My mind races with unanswered questions, all leading back to a man I now realize I may never have truly known. Mr. Adams takes off his glasses, rubbing his nose before replying. Martin had his reasons and he wanted you to understand them, in his own words. As for Claudia and Victoria, he turns to them, you have the option to contest the will if you choose. Though Martin's intentions were clear, and his mental soundness when drafting it is well documented. The room erupts into chaos once again, voices overlapping as Claudia and Victoria express their anger and confusion, scrambling to devise a plan. I barely register their words. My thoughts are fixated on the unopened letter, a final message from my father that rests ominously on the table. Taking a deep breath, I reach for it. The paper feels weightless yet heavy in my hands. Unfolding the folds, I prepare to read the words of a man who chose to speak beyond the grave rather than in life, a man who has bequeathed me an inheritance that feels more like a poisoned chalice than a gift of blessings. Alone in my room, with the door closed tight, I unfold the letter with hands that won't stop shaking. Each crease seems to whisper my father's voice, and as his written words emerge, I brace myself for the understanding they bring. Dearest Alina, it starts in his familiar handwriting. As you read this, I am sorry. Sorry I can't say these things to you in person. Sorry for leaving you with a burden no parent should pass to their child. His apology, immediate and heartfelt, cuts through the legal complexities and stark revelations of moments ago. I take a deep breath, finding solace in the scent of ink on paper. Your strength, your discipline, and your vision for a better world have never gone unnoticed by me. In you I saw the promise of a future built on honesty and integrity, far from the grasp of greed. The paper quivers in my grip, stirred not by a draft through the old window, but by the flood of emotions it releases. I continue reading, eyes fixed on the page. Elena, I have not been blind to the dynamics in our household. Your patience and hard work in the face of neglect from your mother and sister have been both my sorrow and my pride. Entrusting you with my entire estate is my attempt to reconcile the unfair burdens you've had to bear. With each sentence, my father weaves a tapestry of his unspoken observations and quiet support. The man who often seemed distant had been watching closely, understanding more than he let on. My only wish is that this inheritance grants you the freedom and resources to pursue the dreams that burn brightly within you. Don't feel obligated to mend what was broken long before you could make a difference. Live the life you deserve, my Elena. Folding the letter, I hold it against my chest, feeling the love etched in ink by a father who recognized his daughter's selfless sacrifices. A surge of determination mingled with the grief that had shadowed me since his passing, washes over me. Leaving the sanctuary of my room, I re-enter the tempest of my fractured family. Mr. Adams meets my gaze with a silent query as I join them. Claudia's stare is sharp and fixed on me, while Victoria paces like a caged animal, her earlier anger now tinged with desperation. It's time we discuss what comes next, I declare, my voice steadier than I feel. Claudia scoffed. What happens next is that we challenge this absurdity. Victoria nodded fiercely. You can't just take everything, Elena. We deserve our fair share. Mr. Adams intervened. Challenging the will would be a lengthy and costly process with no guaranteed outcome. Martin's wishes are clear and well within his rights to enforce. With my father's heartfelt words weighing heavily in my thoughts, I faced them. The family that had never quite felt like a family. It wasn't my decision, but it was his, and I intend to respect it. Tension gripped us all like chains, but amidst the turmoil, one truth remained resolute. I would fulfill my duty, uphold my father's wishes, and perhaps in doing so, forge my own path towards a better future. In the days that followed, our home became a battleground of eerie silences and explosive arguments. Victoria and Claudia scoured legal avenues, consulting lawyers and searching for any loophole to contest the will. They clung stubbornly to the belief that they were entitled to Martin's legacy, viewing it more as their rightful inheritance than a reflection of a man's lifetime of work. Despite their persistent efforts, Mr. Adams remained steadfast, a calm presence amid the storm. His reassurances were a source of solace as we navigated the complexities of settling the estate. The will is solid, Elena, he would remind me over cups of lukewarm coffee in the formal dining room. You don't need to be concerned about their threats. Yet despite Mr. Adams's confidence, guilt gnawed at me. Was it fair to accept everything while leaving my mother and sister with nothing? Intellectually, I understood my father had his reasons, but emotionally, I struggled with the lingering sense of familial duty, a desire to mend what was broken, even knowing it might be beyond repair. My days were consumed by preparing for legal challenges and diving into my father's financial affairs. The responsibility felt overwhelming, analyzing numbers, making decisions about properties and investments I had never known existed. Each task felt like navigating through thick fog, but I was determined to honor my father's trust and see it through. Amidst scrutinizing financial statements, my thoughts drifted to the life awaiting beyond these walls, how I could use this inheritance to forge a path that aligned with my values, how I could make a meaningful impact on the world. Amidst the escalating chaos, Claudia and Victoria's true colors emerged in bursts of pettiness and malice. Victoria impulsively claimed sentimental family heirlooms, while Claudia hinted at dark secrets that could tarnish Martin's reputation. Their tactics were aimed at undermining me, testing my resolve, but I had learned to navigate their emotional traps with caution. On a particularly tense evening, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken threats and icy stares, I reached my breaking point. Enough, I declared, the single word cutting through the tension like a blade. 3 pairs of eyes focused on me, uncertain, wary. I can't give you what Dad didn't leave for you, but I can help you start fresh somewhere else. Their shock was tangible, a sudden shift in the power dynamics they had been trying to manipulate. It won't be a life of luxury, but it will be a new beginning. Claudia's laughter cut through the air, devoid of humor. A consolation prize from our dear Elena. How generous. Her sarcasm stung, but I remained resolute, shielded by years of hardened resolve. Despite the bitterness hanging between us, I stood firm. It's not about winning or losing, it's a choice. Take it or leave it, but know this, I'm moving forward with or without your approval. Their response was a mixture of silence and reluctant nods, a fragile agreement born from the clash of self-interest and necessity. Retreating to my room, the weight of my father's letter in my pocket reminded me of the path ahead, one where I would navigate not just the inheritance, but also discover who I would become because of it. Days turned into weeks filled with meetings with Mr. Adams and navigating the complexities of managing my inheritance. Claudia and Victoria, begrudgingly accepting my offer, began their search for a more modest home. The tension eased somewhat, yet a coldness lingered in the air deeper than the approaching winter. It was a time of solitude amid chaos, the house growing emptier with each packed box and removed piece of furniture. I found solace in my father's study, a haven untouched by time, a capsule of the past where family tensions once simmered beneath the surface of daily life. The day arrived when Claudia and Victoria left the house for good. With a signed check and a brief farewell, they departed, taking with them remnants of a life forever altered. Standing in the doorway, I watched their car fade around the bend, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. It was time to focus on the future. With Mr. Adams' guidance, I established a charitable foundation in my father's name, dedicated to providing educational opportunities for disadvantaged students, echoing the aspirations of my younger self who once felt her dreams were out of reach within our home. I enrolled in graduate school, pursuing a journalism program that aligned with my long-held career goals. With my father's network and the resources now available to me, I secured an internship at a respected newspaper. My life became a whirlwind of activity, immersed in pursuing stories and advocating for justice, themes my father and I had often discussed during his frequent business trips, now seeming like distant memories. These days, life keeps me constantly moving, carrying the principles my father instilled in me wherever I go. The house, once confining, has transformed into a true home as I've made it my own. I've repainted walls, rearranged furniture, and welcomed a rescue dog, a lively companion whose barks and playful energy filled the once empty spaces with joy. Rooms that once witnessed family discord now echo with the warmth of friends, colleagues, and shared laughter. Occasionally, I retreat to my father's study, immersing myself in his old letters and weathered books. My gaze often rests on his signature at the bottom of his letter, the final message that reshaped my life. Duty and love, he wrote, are the strongest forces we wield. Use them well. In those quiet moments, surrounded by his legacy of words and wisdom, I silently pledged to honor his memory by doing just that. The day Richard threw the crumpled divorce papers at my feet is a day I'll never forget, like a scar that won't fade. I stood there, shocked and unable to move, as he said those chilling words. I've sold the house because I'm moving in with her. It's over, Anna. I was 34 then, taking care of our son Jason, who was only 13. Our life as I knew it fell apart in that moment. I didn't see it coming and I wasn't ready for what would happen next. Richard and I met when I was just 19. He was 26, working at a big company. I was a receptionist at a smaller part of the company. He noticed me and I liked the attention. I was young and he seemed perfect. Our relationship moved quickly. I got pregnant unexpectedly and soon we were married in a simple ceremony. Life seemed uncomplicated back then. I focused on our home and raising Jason. Richard was busy with work, and gradually he was around less. I didn't think much about it. I was busy with our son and our home. The day he left, everything fell apart. I had to face the truth about our supposedly happy life. Richard's cheating, his growing distance. The signs were there, but I chose to ignore them. With nowhere else to go, Jason and I moved back to my family home. My sister Laura and her husband weren't welcoming. They made it clear we were a burden, unwanted in their settled life. I felt lost, a high school graduate with little work experience suddenly needing a job to support us. The job market was tough, each rejection hurt. But I had Jason to care for, a young boy facing grown-up problems. In my desperation, I found a job at a call center. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a glimmer of hope in my dark days. The work was hard, long hours, upset customers, constant business. But it gave me purpose again, something I'd lost in all the turmoil. As I started working in the corporate world, I realized how sheltered I'd been. My lack of knowledge, especially about legal things like divorce and alimony, made me vulnerable to Richard's decisions. This realization sparked something inside me. I promised myself I'd never feel so powerless again. I threw myself into learning about the world outside home and family. Watching Jason grow up, I saw how our situation affected him. He became quieter, more serious than other kids his age, with eyes that seemed older than he was. But he was tough, adapting to our new life with a strength I admired. Our journey was just starting, a path full of challenges and discoveries. But through those challenges, I discovered a resilience I didn't know I had. And from those discoveries, I found a determination to stand up for ourselves and claim what we deserved. Life at my sister Laura's house reminded me every day of how much we had fallen. Her husband Mark didn't hide his dislike, often saying, "Anna, you need to find your own place soon. We can't keep supporting you forever." The pressure was constant. I looked through job listings every day, and every rejection made me feel worse. But Jason's quiet strength kept me going. Despite everything, he stayed focused on his studies, never giving up. One day I found a job opening at a customer service center. It wasn't fancy, but it was a chance. The interview was nerve-wracking. Sitting there in my old suit with a sparse resume, I felt out of place. "Why are you interested in this job?" the interviewer asked. I wanted to say I have no other option, but instead, I forced a smile and replied, "I'm seeking a chance to learn and develop." To my surprise, they offered me the job. It was a contract role, but it was a beginning. When I told Laura and Mark, I felt a mix of relief and a pang of inadequacy when Mark commented, "Finally, you can start pulling your weight." The job was tough, the fast pace, the constant calls. It was overwhelming, but I pushed through, motivated by Jason's needs and my determination to prove myself. As I settled into the routine, I couldn't stop thinking about my marriage with Richard. How did I miss the signs? The late nights, the mysterious disappearances, the hushed phone conversations. I ignored them, believing in a facade of happiness. But the truth was, Richard had a double life, and I was just a convenient cover. Realizing the truth was hard to accept. It sparked anger toward Richard for his betrayal and toward myself for being so trusting. But a conversation with a coworker changed everything. She, a single mother like me but more knowledgeable, said something that hit home. "Anna, did you receive any alimony or child support? You know you're entitled to it, right?" I was shocked. It hadn't even occurred to me. Richard had left us with nothing, and I had simply accepted it. That moment made me see how little I knew and how unprepared I was. Determined to set things right, I started educating myself. I read books, searched online, anything I could find about divorce and family law. The more I learned, the clearer it became how Richard had manipulated the situation. One day I got a call from Jason's school. He'd been in a fight. My heart sank as I hurried there, fearing the worst. But what I found wasn't a troubled kid, it was a young man pushed too far. "He called you a gold digger," Jason said, eyes blazing with anger. "He said you were after Dad's money. I couldn't let him say that about you." I was stunned. Our pain and shame had reached my son, poisoning his world. It was a wake-up call. I couldn't let Richard's betrayal define us anymore. That night, watching Jason sleep, I made a promise. I would fight back. I would reclaim what Richard took from us, not just for me, but for Jason too. It was time for Richard to face the consequences. The small apartment we moved into was a world away from our old home with Richard, but it was ours. The walls were empty, furniture basic, but it marked a fresh beginning. Jason adjusted quickly, surprising me with his resilience. He threw himself into school with a passion that impressed and worried me. "I want to do well, Mom, for us," Jason would say, his determination shining through his words. I'd been at the call center for a year now. The job was still tough, but I'd grown more confident, handling challenges better. It was a small sense of achievement, but it reminded me I wasn't just Richard's ex-wife. One evening at dinner, Jason looked up and asked, "Mom, do you ever think about Dad?" His question caught me off guard. We rarely talked about Richard. "Sometimes," I said, "but not the way you might think. I think about what he did to us, how he left us with nothing." Jason's eyes hardened. "I hate him for that." He thinks he can walk away without any consequences." His words struck a chord in me. His anger and sense of injustice resonated deeply with my own feelings. "You're right," I replied firmly. "He shouldn't get away with it." In the following weeks, I delved into research about divorce and family law. I learned about alimony, child support, and the legal options available. The more I understood, the more empowered I felt. Then, a breakthrough happened. I discovered that in cases of infidelity, the betrayed spouse could seek alimony even years after the divorce under certain circumstances. This revelation was eye-opening. Richard's cheating had left traces. The late-night calls, secretive behavior, it all pointed to his betrayal. Buoyed by this revelation, I sought out a lawyer. She was understanding, her eyes showing empathy beyond professional duty. "You have a case," she confirmed, "but it won't be easy. Are you prepared for this?" I nodded, my determination solid. "I'm ready, for myself and for Jason." The lawyer outlined our strategy. We would pursue alimony, highlighting Richard's infidelity and his failure to support us financially after the divorce. It would be a challenging process, but I was prepared. I had to be. Jason stood by me, his quiet strength a reassuring presence. "We'll get through this, Mom," he assured me. "We're in this together." On the day we filed the lawsuit, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: fear, anxiety, but most of all, a sense of justice. Richard had hurt us, and it was time for him to face the consequences. As the legal battle unfolded, I braced myself for the pushback. Richard wasn't going to accept this quietly, but I wasn't the naive woman he left behind. I had grown stronger, more knowledgeable, and I was prepared to fight. The legal battle against Richard opened a Pandora's box. The lawyer's investigation uncovered more than just infidelity. It exposed a web of lies and deceit that Richard had spun over the years. One afternoon in the lawyer's office, she handed us a file. "This is more than I expected," she said gravely. Richard wasn't just cheating, he was leading a double life. The documents painted a damning picture: bank statements, credit card bills, and photos revealing Richard's secret life. He lived lavishly while neglecting his family. "Take a look at this," the lawyer pointed to a photo. It showed Richard, smiling and carefree with another woman, his arm around her. My heart sank at the sight, but I faced it head-on. This was the harsh truth. Jason's expression hardened as he examined the evidence. "How could he do this to us? To you?" His voice betrayed a mix of anger and disbelief. "We'll hold him accountable," I asserted firmly. "He won't escape this." The legal battle took its toll. Richard's lawyers were aggressive, trying to undermine me, portraying me as a bitter ex-wife. But I stood my ground, supported by Jason and our lawyer, bolstered by the evidence we had gathered. Then came the day of the deposition. Richard sat opposite us, looking confident. However, that confidence faded as our lawyer began presenting the evidence. "Mr. Richard, can you explain these expenses?" she asked, her tone sharp, sliding the bank statements across the table. Richard glanced at the documents, and I sensed a flicker of panic. "These are personal expenses. They're unrelated to my marriage." "And these photos," the lawyer continued, her gaze steady, "they tell a different story." Richard's facade began to crack. He stumbled for words, his composure slipping. "It was just a fling, nothing serious." Jason cut in, his voice cold. "You destroyed our family for a fling." The tension in the room was palpable. Richard's lawyer tried to intervene, but it was too late. The evidence was damning, Richard's excuses weak and unconvincing. Leaving the deposition, I felt a mix of satisfaction and vindication. Richard had been exposed as a cheater. But the legal battle wasn't over. Richard would surely fight back. Yet I was prepared. For the first time, I felt empowered. No longer a victim of Richard's betrayal, I was fighting back, for Jason and for the future we deserved. As the lawsuit dragged on, each hearing more contentious than the last, an unexpected twist emerged. One evening, Jason came home with an unusual expression. "Mom, you won't believe what happened today," he said, a mix of disbelief and amusement in his voice. "What happened?" I asked eagerly. "I had a job interview today at a pharmaceutical company. Guess who the HR manager is?" I felt a shiver down my spine. "Not Richard?" Jason nodded grimly. "Yes, Richard. He didn't recognize me at first. I guess he's forgotten his own son's face." The irony was bitter. Richard, who had abandoned his family for his career, was now unwittingly interviewing his own son. "What did you do?" I asked, feeling a mix of curiosity and concern. A cold determination flashed in Jason's eyes. I played along at first, but then he paused, a smirk appearing on his face. In the end, I couldn't resist. I asked him if the company condones affairs. The look on his face was unforgettable when he realized who I was. I felt torn between shock and a strange satisfaction. Richard, confronted by the son he had abandoned, in a place where he typically felt powerful. "What did he say?" I asked eagerly. "He denied it, of course," Jason replied. so I pressed on. I asked him how he could interview me after tearing our family apart for his own selfish reasons. Jason's voice held bitterness, but also a hint of triumph. He was speechless. I left him there, grappling with his guilt. The revelation hit me hard. Richard was finally facing the consequences of his actions in a way he never expected. It was a twist of fate that felt almost poetic. "But why did you go to that interview?" I asked, still trying to process it all. Jason's answer was simple yet profound. "I needed to confront him face to face, to show him that despite everything, he didn't break us. We're still standing, and we're fighting back." The aftermath of Jason's encounter with Richard at the job interview stirred waves in our ongoing legal battle. Richard, now confronted by his own son, grew more desperate in his defense. Our lawyer, Miss Carter, called us for a strategy meeting. "Richard's lawyers are pushing for a settlement," she informed us in her office, "but considering the evidence and Jason's testimony, I believe we can aim higher. What do you want to do?" I turned to Jason, wanting his input. His expression was resolute, his determination unwavering. "We press forward," he declared firmly. "He needs to face consequences, not just financially, but morally as well." Miss Carter nodded firmly. "Okay, let's get ready for the next meeting. It's going to be tough, but we have the truth on our side." The meeting turned out to be really hard. Richard's lawyer tried to make him seem sorry for his actions, but Miss Carter kept going, showing proof of how Richard had lied and not taken care of his family. Richard went up to speak, seeming both stubborn and fake sorry. "I'm sorry for hurting my family," he said, but his voice didn't sound like he meant it. "But I think the deal they're offering is fair." His words didn't feel true, and I got really mad. How could he act like he was the one who was hurt after everything he'd done? That's when Jason spoke out. "Fair and just?" he challenged, his voice strong yet filled with emotion. "Was it fair to leave your family behind, to lie and cheat while we struggled to make ends meet?" The courtroom went quiet, Jason's words hanging heavily in the air. Richard glanced at his son, perhaps feeling a flicker of guilt, but it was too late for regrets. After thinking it over, the judge decided in our favor. The settlement was much more than what Richard had offered, a clear recognition of the harm he had caused. Leaving the courthouse, I felt a sense of justice. It wasn't just about the money, it was about holding Richard responsible for his actions. "We did it, Mom," Jason said, a small smile forming. "We finally made him face the consequences." The victory in court against Richard wasn't just about winning, it was about restoring our dignity and beginning to heal. But the story didn't stop there. The fallout from Richard's actions began to affect his life, both at work and personally. One evening, a few weeks after the trial, I got a call from a former colleague who worked with Richard at the pharmaceutical company. "Anna, have you heard about Richard?" she asked, sounding surprised and intrigued. "No, what happened?" I replied, feeling a mix of curiosity and concern. "He's been demoted," she disclosed. "After your lawsuit, the company did their own investigation. Turns out he was using company resources for personal matters. They've reassigned him to a remote factory, basically ending his career." I sat in silence, shocked. Richard, once a rising star at his company, was now facing the consequences of his actions in a fitting manner. His career, something he valued above us, was crumbling. Jason listened quietly as I shared the news. "Good," he said simply, though his eyes showed a deeper satisfaction. "He's getting what he deserves." But the consequences continued. Richard's social circle, once close-knit, began to distance themselves. His reputation, damaged by the lawsuit and company investigation, became a liability. I heard from different sources about Richard's downfall, how he had to sell his apartment to cover the settlement and legal costs, and how his second wife, the woman he left us for, struggled with their reduced lifestyle. As I thought about these events, it became clear that Richard had brought this upon himself. His selfish and deceitful choices had led to his downfall. Reflecting on it all, I saw it wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about the universe correcting a wrong. Jason and I discussed this one evening, our conversation more contemplative than vengeful. "Do you pity him?" Jason asked, his tone even. I hesitated, pondering his question. "No," I replied finally, "but I do feel a sense of closure. It's like a chapter has finally ended, allowing us to start fresh." Jason nodded in agreement. "Yeah, it's time to move forward, focus on our own lives." With the legal battle settled and Richard facing the consequences of his actions, Anna and Jason looked ahead to the future, feeling the weight of the past gradually lift from their shoulders. They had endured hardships and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the next phase of their lives. As the legal issues faded into the background and Richard dealt with the fallout, a new sense of freedom settled over us. It was like we had been freed from a dark cloud that had hung over us for years. Our modest apartment, once a symbol of our struggles, began to feel more like a home. We redecorated, making it a reflection of our fresh start. The walls, once bare, now held artwork, and shelves were filled with books and cherished memories. Jason, now more relaxed and focused, was excelling in his studies. His earlier determination, fueled by anger and a quest for justice, had evolved into a genuine love for learning. "I'm thinking of applying for a research internship this summer," he shared one evening, his eyes shining with excitement. "That's fantastic, Jason," I replied, feeling proud. "You've put in so much effort for this." Our conversations had shifted from dwelling on the past to discussing the future, what we had endured and what we hoped to achieve. We talked about travel, the places we dreamed of visiting, and the experiences we wanted to have. One day, while we sat enjoying coffee in our newly decorated living room, I brought up a topic that had been on my mind. "Jason, have you considered dating? You know, meeting someone special." He chuckled, slightly embarrassed. "I've been so focused on school and everything else, but yeah, I think I'm ready to start dating," Jason said. I smiled, feeling glad to see him thinking about normal, happy parts of life after all we'd been through. It felt like a victory in itself. Meanwhile, I had found a new sense of purpose beyond my job at the call center. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping other women who had faced similar challenges. Sharing my story and offering support brought a deep sense of fulfillment I hadn't experienced before. One evening, as Jason and I sat on our balcony under the stars, a peaceful feeling surrounded us. "Mom, do you ever think about Dad anymore?" Jason asked softly. I paused, thinking about his question. "Sometimes," I admitted, but not with anger or resentment. "I think about how much we've grown since then, how he was a part of our journey but not the whole story." Jason nodded in understanding. "Yeah," he agreed, "I feel the same. He's just a chapter in our past." We sat quietly for a moment, each lost in our own thoughts. The journey we'd been through wasn't one we'd chosen, but it had shaped us in ways we never expected.
I lay on the cold kitchen floor, holding my side where I felt sharp pain spreading through my body. It felt like a knife was twisting inside me. My 7-year-old daughter, Lily, stood nearby, her small face showing how scared she was. "Mommy, are you okay?" Lily's voice shook, barely louder than a whisper. I tried to sound calm despite the pain. "I'll be fine, honey, just a bad stomach ache," I lied, trying to hide how serious it was. Footsteps echoed through the hallway as my husband David appeared in the doorway. His face showed annoyance instead of concern. He was ready for his trip, holding his suitcase. "What's going on, Evelyn? Why are you on the floor?" David asked, sounding annoyed. "I think it's appendicitis, David. It's really bad. We need to go to the hospital," I managed to say, each word hurting me. He scoffed. "Appendicitis? You're probably overreacting. It's likely just indigestion." "But David, I really think—" My words were cut off by a sharp pain, making me wince. David checked his watch, clearly impatient. "I can't miss this trip with Rachel. Just call a taxi or something." I couldn't believe it. "David, I can't even move. Lily's here. I need you," I begged, desperation in my voice. He shook his head, not caring. "I'm sure it's nothing. Call if it gets worse." And with that, he left, his suitcase trailing behind him. I was left alone in pain with Lily. Lily's small hands found mine, her tears matching my own. "Mommy, don't be sick. You have to be okay." I gathered what little strength I had and pulled Lily close. "I'm here, darling. Mommy's here." With David gone, I knew I had to act. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone and called the only person I knew I could count on, my brother Michael. The phone rang, its sound piercing the quiet kitchen. "Hello," Michael's voice came through, a beacon of hope. "Michael, it's Evelyn. I need help. I think it's appendicitis. I can't move and Lily is scared," I managed to say, each word a struggle. There was a brief silence, then Michael's voice, calm and steady. "I'm on my way. Hold tight, Evelyn. I'll be there soon." Leaning against the cold tile floor, I closed my eyes, trying to endure the pain. Lily nestled close to me, a small comfort in the midst of turmoil. In that moment, a determination grew inside me. David's abandonment during my crisis wouldn't be forgotten. It was a deep hurt, a betrayal that marked a turning point. As I waited for Michael, one thing became clear: things would change. In the hospital bed later, surrounded by sterile walls and beeping machines, a sense of calm settled in. The surgery for my appendicitis went well, but David's emotional absence still stung. I had called my parents to care for Lily while I recovered, their voices filled with concern and unspoken questions about David's whereabouts. 3 days later, I was back home, the physical pain now a dull reminder of the recent ordeal. Lily greeted me eagerly, her face lighting up at my return. "Mommy, you're back. Are you all better now?" Her innocent question warmed my heart. "I'm getting there, sweetie," I replied, hugging her tightly, grateful for her presence. The peace of our reunion was shattered the next day by the slam of the front door. David and his sister Rachel burst in, their voices filled with frustration. "Why didn't you pick us up yesterday? We had to spend extra on a taxi and train fares." David's accusatory voice rang out as he entered the living room. I felt a surge of anger at his boldness. "Welcome back. Must have been quite a journey," I said coldly, locking eyes with him. David halted, taken aback by my icy reception. Even Rachel seemed surprised by the tension. "What's with the attitude, Evelyn?" David demanded. I couldn't hold back anymore. "While you were enjoying your trip, I was in a hospital," I said, my voice steady but simmering with anger. "And you, Rachel, always demanding David's time without considering his family." Rachel flushed and David appeared bewildered. "What are you talking about? You were fine, right?" he replied, sounding dismissive. "It's not just about being okay, David. It's about being there when your family needs you," I shot back, my frustration boiling over. Before David could respond, the living room door swung open, revealing Michael, our parents, and David's parents. 14 eyes, filled with varying degrees of anger and disappointment, fixed on David and Rachel. "Why is everyone here?" David's voice faltered, his confidence waning under their collective glare. Taking a deep breath, I channeled my pain and betrayal into words. "David, you left Lily and me alone when we needed you the most. I had to go to the hospital, and you weren't there. I've told everything to our families." David seemed to shrink under the weight of my words, his usual bravado absent. His eyes darted around, searching for support but finding none. "It's not just about this one incident, David. It's about all the times you've prioritized Rachel over your own family," my brother Michael added, his disappointment evident in his voice. Rachel, typically confident, appeared uneasy, shifting her gaze between the floor and the upset faces around her. David attempted to defend himself, offering excuses and justifications. The confrontation grew heated, tension thick in the air. But for me, it marked a turning point. I realized I couldn't continue living in the shadow of David's neglect. It was time for change, time to assert myself and protect Lily. The meeting concluded without resolution, but the message was clear. I had the support of both our families, and David's careless facade had been shattered. As they departed, David's parents glanced at me with sympathy, silently acknowledging their son's shortcomings. That night, as I lay in bed, the events of the day replayed in my mind. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, disappointment, but also a newfound strength. David had revealed his true self, and I knew it was time for me to take charge of my life. The days following the confrontation were tense with unspoken words. David tried to act as if nothing had changed, but the atmosphere between us was heavy. I spent that time reflecting, realizing the depth of my discontent and the necessity for change. The decision I reached wasn't easy, but it felt crucial, like a breath of fresh air after being stifled for so long. One evening, while David casually flipped through TV channels on the couch, I approached him with a folder in hand. My heart raced, but my determination held firm. "David, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. He glanced up, a hint of annoyance crossing his face. "What now, Evelyn?" I took a deep breath and handed him the folder. "I want a divorce." David stared at me, disbelief and mockery flashing across his expression. "Divorce? That's absurd, Evelyn. You're blowing things out of proportion." I shook my head, feeling a surge of empowerment. "It's not an exaggeration. I've thought long and hard about this. You've consistently prioritized Rachel over me and Lily. I can't continue like this." David sneered. "You think you can manage alone? Don't be naive, Evelyn." His words were meant to hurt, but I stood firm. "I'm not naive, David. I understand what this means, but I'd rather face uncertainty than continue feeling invisible in my own marriage." He laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "Good luck, Evelyn. You'll regret this once you realize how tough it is out there." I felt my anger rise, but I kept my composure. "I won't. This is my decision, and I'm sticking to it." For a moment, David seemed like he might argue further, but then he shrugged, a smug smirk on his face. "Fine, have it your way. But remember, I warned you." As he turned back to the TV, dismissing me once again, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. There was fear, certainly, but also a powerful sense of liberation. I was finally taking charge of my life, stepping out of the shadows. The next day, I started the legal process for divorce. It was overwhelming with all the paperwork and legal steps, but I was determined. My parents and Michael were supportive, offering help and encouragement. During this time, David's true nature became clearer. He was dismissive and uncooperative, trying to intimidate me into giving up. But I stood my ground, strengthened by my family's support and my growing sense of strength. As time went on, David's facade began to crack. The charming, confident man I married revealed himself to be selfish and manipulative, his true self exposed. The divorce proceedings were challenging, but I faced them bravely, each forward step a testament to my newfound determination. I was no longer the woman who lay on the kitchen floor, ignored and in pain. I was reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my happiness. The divorce process was exhausting, marked by David's constant attempts to undermine and demean me. In our meetings, he would sneer and make hurtful remarks about my parenting and my future without him. But instead of letting his words defeat me, they fueled my determination to break free from his toxic influence. "Enjoy your struggles, Evelyn," David taunted in one of our final meetings. "You'll soon see how good you had it with me." His arrogance infuriated me, but I remained composed. I'd rather face challenges every day than spend another moment with someone who has so little regard for his family, I replied firmly. David's smug demeanor briefly faltered, replaced by a flicker of anger. He quickly masked it with a scoff, but I could sense my words had struck a nerve. The day the divorce was finalized brought a strange mix of relief and nervousness. I was finally free from David, yet the road ahead seemed daunting. However, as I walked out of the courthouse, a wave of liberation washed over me. In the weeks following our divorce, David's life began to unravel. His neglectful behavior and our separation became the gossip of his workplace. Colleagues who had once admired him now looked at him with pity and disdain. His charming facade had crumbled, exposing the pettiness and selfishness beneath. News of our divorce spread throughout our community, largely due to my cousin, who was well connected in our neighborhood. David, who had always cared deeply about his image and reputation, found himself the subject of hushed conversations and judgmental stares. Rachel also faced criticism. Her role in our marital problems was now public knowledge, and friends and neighbors began to regard her with suspicion and disapproval. The bond she had with David, once unbreakable in her eyes, now seemed strained and uneasy. One evening, while picking up Lily from school, I overheard a heated argument between David and Rachel outside their house. Their voices dripped with blame and resentment. "It's your fault we're in this mess, Rachel," David yelled, his frustration palpable. "How dare you blame me? You're the one who couldn't hold your family together." Rachel shot back, her voice filled with anger. Their argument was a stark contrast to the united front they once presented. The discord sowed by their actions had finally come to fruition, and now they were facing the consequences. As I walked away with Lily, I felt a sense of vindication. David and Rachel were now grappling with the results of their selfish choices. It was a tough lesson, but one they had brought upon themselves. That night, as Lily slept peacefully in her room, I sat by the window reflecting on the past few months. The journey had been challenging, but it had brought me to a place of strength and self-respect. I had fought for my dignity and for Lily's future. Although the future was uncertain, I felt prepared to confront it with newfound confidence. In the aftermath of the divorce, life settled into a new rhythm, one that was quieter yet more fulfilling. The weight of my unhappy marriage had lifted, replaced by a newfound sense of independence. I began rebuilding my life step by step, with Lily by my side. My first priority was finding a job. The gap in my resume from years spent focusing on motherhood was a concern, but I was determined. After several interviews, I secured a position at a small accounting firm. The firm, led by a supportive woman who valued working mothers, offered a flexible and understanding environment. It was an ideal fit for me. Lily embraced the changes with the resilience that only children possess. She started kindergarten, making new friends and eagerly diving into learning. Her laughter and lively conversations filled our home with happiness, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere of the past. Yet despite these positive changes, reminders of my past with David lingered. One afternoon, while dropping Lily off at school, I overheard a group of parents whispering, "That's her, Evelyn. Her husband left her because he couldn't stand being around her anymore," one of them said. Their words stung, but I held my head high. The gossip and judgment were small prices to pay for the freedom and peace I now had. Meanwhile, David's life continued to unravel. His pride took a significant hit, and his once flawless reputation was now tarnished. I heard from mutual acquaintances that he had moved back in with his parents, a fact he tried to conceal but eventually became known. Rachel's situation wasn't any better. Her interference in our marriage had isolated her from many friends. The once close siblings were now barely on speaking terms, their relationship strained by blame and regret. As for me, I found solace in the unwavering support of my family. My brother Michael had moved closer to us, his presence a constant source of comfort. My parents showered Lily with love, their affection soothing the wounds of the past. One day, while savoring coffee in my kitchen, I reflected on the journey I had endured, the pain, the struggle, and ultimately, the liberation. It had all brought me to this moment of peace. I hadn't just survived. I had emerged stronger and more self-assured. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Opening it, I found David standing there, wearing a look of defeat. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone," he said, his apology, though belated, validating my decision. "Thank you, David," I replied gently, "but it's too late. I've moved on." As I closed the door on David and the life we once shared, a sense of closure washed over me. That chapter of my life had ended, and a new one was beginning. In this new chapter, I was the author of my own story, free to shape my future as I saw fit. Lily's voice called out from the living room, and a smile spread across my face. I walked towards her, eager to embrace the life that lay ahead, a life brimming with possibilities and hope. I'm 29 years old, and I recently got a call from my mom. I hadn't talked to her in almost 5 years. She said she needed my help because my sister and her husband had just gone through a tragedy. Here's some background. The man who is now my sister's husband was once supposed to be my husband. My sister Melissa, who's 27, got together with my fiancé Lucas, 29, on the day of my engagement. Lucas and I had been together since college, and he proposed to me after almost 5 years of dating. He threw a surprise party for us on the night of our engagement. I remember feeling on top of the world until around 1 p.m. when I went out into the backyard for better reception and saw my sister all over Lucas. They were kissing so passionately that for the first couple of seconds, they didn't even notice me standing there shocked. I couldn't believe he would do this to me after nearly 5 years together, especially on the night of our engagement. When they finally noticed me, they broke apart instantly, but the damage was done. I ran to my car, drove to the nearest hotel, and hyperventilated from shock. I desperately hoped what I saw wasn't real. Then Melissa texted me, apologizing but confessing she was in love with Lucas, and this had been going on for a long time. I was alone in a hotel room when I got that text and broke down completely. Soon after, Lucas texted me with a similar apology, saying he proposed to me hoping it would help him forget Melissa. But it hadn't worked. He said it wasn't about me. They believed they were meant to be together. I realized I was just a temporary stand-in for Lucas until he could be with Melissa. I stayed at the hotel for a couple of days, trying to pull myself together. I felt like I was losing my mind, hoping this was all some cruel joke. After almost 4 days, I went back home because I needed to collect my things and couldn't risk losing my job. When I arrived home, I found out my family had been living with Lucas all this time, waiting for me to return. It would have been touching if it wasn't for how I had left. Everyone had been trying to reach me with texts while I was gone, but I hadn't responded to any of them. So when I finally returned, there was chaos. Everyone hugged me and told me how relieved they were to see me. Even Melissa came up to me, tears in her eyes, and hugged me tightly. I was too numb to react and stood there silently while everyone surrounded me. Finally, after everyone had settled down, I cleared my throat and explained that I had returned only to pack my things and leave for good. Lucas had been silent until then, but when I mentioned moving out, he spoke up, saying he had already packed and planned to move in with Melissa now that everything was out in the open. To my surprise, my family, my parents, my aunt, and my dad's youngest sister were all smiling broadly despite the situation. Even though I couldn't see any reason to smile, they seemed happy. Melissa stood beside Lucas in an awkward hug, looking at me sadly but with a smile on her face. I couldn't bear it any longer. I asked my family why they were smiling. From my perspective, Melissa had just broken up my engagement and taken my boyfriend of nearly 5 years. There was nothing funny or sweet about what had happened. At that moment, my mother decided to speak up. She said they couldn't change the past but could accept the future, which now included Melissa and Lucas together. Even though their relationship started with betrayal, they felt sorry about it but believed it was for the best. Melissa apologized for taking Lucas from me and expressed regret that I found out this way. She explained they were deeply in love and wanted to be together forever. Then, right in front of me, they kissed, and my mother even wiped a tear from her eye. I couldn't hold back. I told them this wasn't a sentimental moment and their actions were disgusting. To my surprise, my family seemed annoyed with me. They accused me of being bratty and self-centered. Instead of being happy for Melissa, they said I was making everything about myself, and they didn't approve of my behavior. I was shocked by their attitude and immediately demanded everyone leave my house. I couldn't believe they were defending Melissa and Lucas while making me out to be the villain. They acted like my feelings were an overreaction. My father intervened, telling me to stop acting like a child and accept that these things happen. He wanted me to celebrate Melissa finding her soulmate instead of feeling jealous. Their behavior seemed insane to me, and I couldn't handle it anymore. So I decided to leave again without speaking to them or listening to their pleas. Even as they called after me, I kept going. I felt like there was nothing left to say because it was clear they cared more about Melissa's happiness than about me or what was right. They were so focused on justifying Melissa's actions that they forgot I was a person with real emotions. After that day, my family tried reaching out to me multiple times, but I chose not to respond because I didn't feel I owed them anything. A few weeks later, I even received an invitation to Melissa and Lucas's wedding, which I declined, of course. Many of our mutual friends also turned down the invitation in solidarity with me. Even some relatives who knew the truth stopped interacting with my family after seeing how they treated me. It's been 5 years now, and I've mostly cut them out of my life completely. They occasionally try to reconnect by sending me birthday or New Year wishes, but I always ignore them. I didn't block them, but I did remove them from my social media connections. Since my profiles are public, they can see what I'm doing, which is intentional. I want them to see that I'm living a great life and feel a pang of jealousy. It might be petty, but it's the least I can do after how they treated me. Until recently, I had little idea of what my family had been up to over the past few years. About 4 days ago, my mother called me from an unfamiliar number. When I recognized her voice, I almost hung up immediately, but she pleaded with me desperately for a chance to talk, saying they were in urgent need of help. Out of sheer humanity, I agreed to listen for a few minutes. She explained that Melissa and Lucas had started their own business a couple of years ago, but it was failing miserably. Investors were pulling out because of the lack of profit. They had borrowed more money in hopes of turning things around, but it only added to their debt. Now they were deeply in debt and facing pressure from loan sharks, employees, investors, and other creditors. My mother knew I lived a comfortable lifestyle and turned to me as a last resort, begging me to loan Melissa and Lucas money to pay off their debts. She asked for nearly $75,000. I questioned why Melissa hadn't asked me directly for help and why my mother was speaking for her. My mother explained that Melissa and Lucas didn't want her to approach me. They hadn't told me about their financial troubles because of our history from 5 years ago. Melissa wasn't ready to accept help from me, but my mother didn't know anyone else who could lend them such a large sum at short notice. A couple of months had passed, and Melissa and Lucas were struggling to make ends meet, even for basic necessities. My parents and Lucas's family were doing their best to support them, but their resources were limited. Both families were retired and needed to secure their own futures, so giving away their savings wasn't feasible. With no other options left, my mother called me to ask for help. I could afford to help them financially, but I didn't want to. Melissa was right not to ask me directly after what happened between us. They forfeited any right to expect anything from me when they betrayed me. I told my mother firmly that I couldn't and wouldn't help them. She sounded hurt and argued that I was being heartless and needed to think about our family. I replied that Melissa and Lucas didn't consider me when they had their affair, and my family didn't consider my feelings while supporting them. So I saw no reason to consider them now either. I had worked really hard to get where I am today, and I wasn't going to just give away $75,000 to people who didn't deserve it. Then my mom called and started crying, saying she never thought I'd become so selfish. She said my sister and her husband would be in big trouble if I didn't help them. I told her I couldn't help, and I hung up. Since then, my mom has been texting me nonstop, begging me to change my mind and think about my sister. She said it wasn't the time for revenge and that my sister was in serious trouble. She thinks I'll regret not helping her in the future. It's really stressful, and I don't know what to do because I don't want to be seen as the bad person. Am I wrong for not helping my sister financially after she stole my fiancé 5 years ago? Update. So I finally decided to block my family. I didn't do it sooner because I wanted them to see how well I was doing and maybe feel envious. Also, I worried I might regret cutting them off if something bad happened to them. But now, I just don't care. I should have cut ties with them 5 years ago. I don't know why I kept them around for so long. That was my mistake. Refusing to help my sister now isn't about being petty. It just makes sense. They've already wasted a lot of money, and even if I gave them some now, they probably wouldn't be able to pay it back. $75,000 is a lot of money even for someone like me who's doing well financially. If I lend that much, I expect it back, even from close friends. But these people aren't close to me, and I can't count on them to repay me. So there's no reason for me to give them money. It's that simple. I talked to a few friends about it, and they agreed I made the right call. It's not about revenge, it's just not practical to help them after how they treated me in the past. Now that my mother can't contact me anymore, I don't have to worry about feeling guilty. Update 2. Hey everyone, something pretty intense happened today. I was at work when my neighbor called to say there was a couple outside my house causing a scene, yelling for me to come out and talk to them. She said they seemed unstable and had been there for an hour, refusing to leave. I asked for a description, and deep down, I knew it was Melissa and Lucas. My neighbor insisted I come home to handle the situation, and I agreed. With Melissa and Lucas, trouble always followed. I thanked her and rushed home to make sure they didn't get inside my house. I got home in about 15 minutes and caught them trying to break into my house by picking the lock. I parked in front of my place and asked them what they were doing. I tried to call the police, but Lucas knocked the phone out of my hand. Melissa then said they were only here to talk and didn't want anything from me, at least not right now. I told them to make it quick and insisted we stay outside in the yard. I didn't feel comfortable inviting them inside, especially since they seemed hostile despite claiming they didn't want anything from me. Melissa began speaking. She said my mother had told her about the phone call I ignored and how I had blocked them all. She accused me of being unfair and said it had been 5 years since the incident with my fiancé, so I should have moved on by now. She claimed I was acting dramatically to get attention from the family and felt insulted by my refusal to help them. That's why she wanted to talk to me. She explained that she had managed to gather the money this time by selling their house and jewelry, but she might need more in the future. Melissa said she needed assurance that I would be there to help again. I firmly told her no. I made it clear she couldn't rely on me because I deeply dislike her and her husband. I was so furious that I even mentioned how close I was to hitting her, so they should leave immediately. Then Lucas demanded that I sign a document promising to give them money whenever they asked. I couldn't believe it. I knew it wouldn't be legally binding if I signed it under duress. They were being unreasonable and seemed to think they could manipulate me into doing something like that. I ordered both of them to leave, but Melissa pushed me and insisted that I had to help them because we were family, and I couldn't avoid my responsibilities like this. I was shocked by her push, and I almost slapped her in response, but I managed to restrain myself because I knew it would only escalate things. Instead, I quickly grabbed my phone from the ground where Lucas had knocked it, and I ran to my car. I jumped in and drove off without even looking back. Since I had left the engine running earlier, I was able to speed away quickly. They didn't attempt to chase me on foot, so they stayed at my house, which was unfortunate for them. Once I was a safe distance away, I called the police and explained the situation. I hurried back home and arrived just in time for the police to show up. In less than 20 minutes, I gave them all the details, and they arrested Melissa and Lucas. I knew the charges might not be severe, but it was worth it to have them taken away and not have to deal with them anymore. It's been a few hours since then, and surprisingly, I haven't heard from anyone in my family. I thought someone might try to contact me from a different number by now, but they haven't. It makes me think they might be done with the situation and won't bother me again. Or maybe they're waiting for things to calm down before reaching out. Update 3. Hi, it's been about a week since my last update. I had started to think my family might leave me alone after I called the police on Melissa and Lucas. But I was wrong. They still found a way to bother me, and this time it was my parents who came to my house, asking if they could talk to me. This happened yesterday, and they seemed much more humble compared to Melissa and Lucas, so I allowed them in. My mother started crying as soon as she came in, apologizing for taking Melissa's side over mine in the past. My father said that after hearing about Melissa and Lucas getting arrested for their actions, including pushing me, they couldn't see them the same way anymore. They decided to cut them off. My mother continued crying throughout her visit while my father apologized for siding with Melissa instead of me in the past. I thanked them for finally realizing their mistake, but I explained that it was too late to repair our relationship. I've grown accustomed to living life on my own terms, and I'm not willing to prioritize my family over myself anymore. I appreciated their visit and apology, but I couldn't promise to work on our relationship. They tried to argue that we could fix things if we tried, but the truth was I no longer wanted to try. I just wanted to focus on myself. They seemed disappointed but eventually left, asking if I could at least unblock them so we could stay in touch. I've unblocked my parents now, which feels strange, but that's where things stand.
Since you can't even do chores properly, you might as well just keep working, huh? Those words really annoyed me. Thomas used to oppose me working. He was jealous when I became a supervisor, asked me for money when I got a raise, and now he wants me to work nonstop. It's frustrating how selfish he can be. What's wrong? Got a problem? If you do, then do whatever you want, Thomas replied, seeing I was upset, with a look that said, fine, I'll do whatever I want to. I couldn't keep quiet, so I snapped back and went to bed annoyed. I was so angry at Thomas, but work doesn't stop for anyone. The next day, as soon as I got to the office, I asked for a meeting with the boss. Just like I told Thomas, I decided to do what I wanted and took on a certain task that had been suggested earlier. My name's Anna. I'm 30 years old and I married Thomas, who's also 30, about 3 years ago. We haven't had children yet, so we're both working hard and earning money. In the past, people used to expect women to stay home after marriage, but things are different now. Even though we work at different companies, we both have full-time jobs and share the household tasks. Thomas usually handles laundry and cleaning while I focus on cooking meals. Since we got married, I've been trying to cook delicious meals that Thomas enjoys. At work, I work hard to match the performance of my male colleagues, and recently I was promoted to supervisor. Being a supervisor means I have more work to do, both in quantity and quality. However, Thomas, despite being a coworker, didn't try to understand my situation. One evening at dinner, Thomas said, "Didn't we have this for dinner yesterday? Your cooking seems a bit careless these days. Please put more effort into it." Thomas is still in a lower position, not a supervisor like me. Maybe he felt jealous that I got promoted before him. Instead of being happy for me, he started complaining every day. Even though I have less free time now, I still make sure to do my part in household chores, I thought, understanding that Thomas's complaints were rooted in jealousy, so I had to remain patient. I do my best to prepare in the mornings, but sometimes dinner ends up being late when I get home, so I've been making side dishes ahead of time. Side dishes again. So you're saying dinner is the same every day? That's not what I meant. Please don't misunderstand. You're the one who said you take care of meals when we got married, right? The women at my company handle their households well, even while raising kids. I always mention that. I couldn't respond. Maybe there are such women at Thomas's workplace, but comparing ourselves to others doesn't help. Besides, the women Thomas talks about actually work part-time. It's not that I think less of part-time work, but being compared like that doesn't sit right with me. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Well, I'll forgive you this time, 'cause I'm kind," Thomas replied, starting to eat again once I apologized. I wish he'd just eat without commenting if he's going to eat anyway, but there's nothing I can do about it. When I talk about Thomas to my friends, they say it's good practice for dealing with kids. Indeed, even though we don't have children, dealing with Thomas sometimes feels like dealing with a child. I have to handle him with patience. "Oh, by the way, you did the laundry, right? Thanks for that." "Huh? Oh yeah, of course that was the agreement, you know. Without me the house wouldn't function, huh?" I held back what I wanted to say and praised Thomas. He seemed pleased with that. Indeed, Thomas does his part of the household chores as we agreed. but when it comes to laundry, he doesn't check the care labels or use a laundry bag. He just throws everything in and presses one button for wash and dry. So sometimes Thomas complains about clothes shrinking or getting worn out. If that's what counts as doing chores properly, I wonder how well I'm actually managing. But I never expressed my dissatisfaction. The one time I did, it led to a big fight. "Why didn't you quit your job and do everything yourself?" That's what I said when we got married. "I shouldn't have listened to anything you said, just like Betty told me." Thomas yelled angrily and insulted me, then stopped talking to me for about 2 weeks. Of course, during that time, he didn't do his share of the work, leaving me to handle everything on my own. I find it easier to endure some challenges than to feel completely drained, both mentally and physically. Indeed, as Thomas mentioned during our argument, he wasn't initially supportive of me working. "Betty said there's nothing good about a married woman working outside. That's why I want you to stay at home," he told me. I don't know why Thomas's sister feels that way, but I was willing to go along with it if that's what Thomas preferred. However, it soon became clear that we couldn't manage on just Thomas's salary alone. We couldn't rely solely on ideals, we needed practical solutions, so I pleaded desperately with him to let me continue working. My company is reputable and pays well. If we both worked, we could have some financial flexibility. Reluctantly, Thomas agreed to my heartfelt plea, which led us to where we are now. Despite everything, whether reluctantly or not, Thomas did share in the household chores. It's true that even that much help was appreciated. As Thomas's birthday approached, we hadn't done anything lavish to celebrate since we got married. Normally, we would mark the occasion at home with my cooking. But this year, with my recent promotion and salary increase, I decided to treat him to a dinner at a hotel. On the day itself, after buying him a gift, Thomas was pleasantly surprised and thoroughly enjoyed the steak dinner. "This is the best meal I've ever had, but are you sure we can afford this?" he asked. "It's your special day. I got a raise since becoming a supervisor and will budget more carefully from now on. No need to worry about the side dishes, all right?" We shared a joke and ended the day that way. Yet, I didn't notice the smug smile on Thomas's face at that moment. A few days later, Thomas asked, "Hey, you mentioned your salary went up, right? How much of a raise did you get as a supervisor?" He kept bringing it up after his birthday. Supervisor seemed like a touchy subject we both avoided, but as soon as he heard about the raise, his attitude changed quickly. "Being a supervisor is great. You've worked hard for it." He started praising me like that. At first, I was surprised by his sudden shift and just gave a small smile to downplay it. But he kept pressing about the salary. I continued to dodge the topic, but when I kept avoiding him, he sulked. "What's wrong? Feeling superior now that you're a supervisor? Maybe you look down on me, just an employee at a small company. It was just a treat for your birthday. We're not wealthy, so let's not keep talking about money." I finally snapped, and that stopped his persistence. But it was clear Thomas was fixated on my income. If I had known it would lead to this, maybe I wouldn't have become a supervisor or celebrated his birthday. There was some regret, but it wasn't all bad. Since becoming a supervisor, I've been given an important project. Even though it means more work, Thomas has been supportive. "You're a supervisor and busy with work. I'll do what I can," he said, even preparing dinner, even if it was just frozen meals. Despite his focus on money, his effort made that birthday special, perhaps. Later, when the project settled down, Thomas asked eagerly, "So you've been busy, you must be getting a special bonus, right?" I was taken aback by his question. "No, why would there be a bonus?" I replied wearily, surprised. Then Thomas erupted. "Months of overtime and no bonus. What was the point of me helping then? What a lousy company." I didn't have the energy to argue back. Is there supposed to be a deeper meaning behind a couple's cooperation? The idea of him criticizing someone's company was hard to believe. That was the moment I couldn't hold back anymore. "What I meant was, I appreciated your help, but is this what you really think?" I responded, and Thomas fired back. This led to a heated argument. "Enough, let's stop. I'm tired and going to sleep," I said, ending the conversation abruptly. After that, I couldn't bear to look at Thomas for a while. Sometime later, I had to go on a business trip. We hadn't spoken since the argument, but I needed to inform him since I would be away. "I'll be gone for 2 nights and 3 days on a business trip. Please take care while I'm away," I told him. However, perhaps still upset, Thomas didn't respond. Without resolving things, I left for my trip. Busy with work for 3 days, I found myself wondering about Thomas during my breaks. Was he eating well? I worried, but my pride stopped me from reaching out. Being apart helped me calm down, and I planned to apologize upon my return. When I returned after 3 days of work, I brought back some tasty souvenirs and headed home. "I'm back," I announced upon entering, but something felt strange right away. There were many unfamiliar pairs of shoes by the door, and the scent of cooking filled the air, not the usual frozen meals, but the unmistakable aroma of home-cooked food. Thomas can't cook, I thought. rushing into the living room. "Oh, Anna, welcome back," Betty greeted me. "What are you doing here?" I asked, surprised to see Thomas's sister, Betty, in our kitchen. As I glanced around, I noticed Thomas's niece, Lisa, lounging on the couch as if she belonged there. It didn't seem like a casual visit. It looked like they had moved in. Even the couch seemed new, not the one we had before my trip. I stood at the living room entrance, completely bewildered by the scene unfolding before me. "Dinner will be ready soon," Betty said casually, while I continued to stare at her in disbelief. I walked over to Thomas, sitting in a chair in the living room, and asked him, "What's happening, Thomas?" "It's a big decision to live with Betty and Lisa now. The move is already done," Thomas said casually, acting like it was the most natural thing. "That's what's happening, so let's all get along," Betty added with a smile. But I couldn't find it in me to smile back. Moving their stuff in without asking, deciding to live together without discussing it first. "Hold on, you can't just decide this on your own," I protested. "What's the issue? You're always too busy with overtime to handle housework anyway. It's easier if we live together and Betty takes care of things," Thomas retorted to my objections. Betty had Lisa when she was 20 and got divorced a few years later. Since then, she's been a single mother raising Lisa, who is now 18, all on her own. I knew this, and I knew Thomas cared deeply for his older sister, Betty, but I never expected it would lead to us living together. "Come on, Anna," Betty said confidently. "Nice to meet you," Lisa murmured quietly. My head was throbbing, but I couldn't accept the situation silently. "I'm sorry, but I can't live with all of you," I said firmly. However, Thomas laughed at me as if it were a joke. "Why not? Since you can't even handle housework properly, you might as well keep working, right?" His words irritated me. It was Thomas who initially opposed me working, jealous of my promotion, then relied on my salary increase. And now he was telling me to keep working. It was unbelievable and selfish. "What's the matter? Got a complaint?" "If you do, then do whatever you want," Thomas retorted with a frown, sensing my irritation. "Fine, I'll do whatever I want then." But I was the one who wanted to be angry. I couldn't keep quiet, so I told Thomas how I felt. After that, we didn't speak, and I went to bed. Betty and Lisa apparently decided to give up their own place and moved into our home, bringing their bed with them. They turned the room that was supposed to be for our future children into their room without asking me. I felt more sadness than anger. But work couldn't wait. The next day, as soon as I arrived, I asked for a meeting with the director. I decided to take on a task that HR had proposed earlier. "That's wonderful. I appreciate you taking it on. It's a great opportunity, so I'll give it my all," I promised the director, fully engrossed in my work. I found it more comforting to be at the office than at home. Unable to forgive Thomas, a few days later he messaged me, "Hey Anna, how long are you going to keep sulking? Just come back already." I had been going home, but only when everyone was asleep, leaving before anyone woke up. However, for the past few days, I hadn't even returned home because I found a new place to live. "Come back. You can't just do that," he replied, laughing. "I can't come back right away," I said. "Why not?" "I'm in Italy right now. It's the middle of the night here. And Betty's there to take care of the house, right?" "Huh?" Thomas paused, surprised by my tired response. It was night for him, but already the middle of the night where I was. Dealing with this conversation with Thomas after work was just training. Finally understanding, Thomas suddenly raised his voice. "What? Italy? You went on a trip without telling us?" "It's not a trip. I've been living here for the past 3 days. What are you talking about?" But my response seemed to confuse Thomas again. "Again? Didn't you say I could do whatever I wanted?" I could almost picture him stunned on the other end of the phone. "What I meant is, you told me to do whatever I wanted, and I did. So I accepted the assignment in Italy that was offered to me earlier. They've set up a condo for me, and it's a beautiful place," I explained. "There's a limit to doing whatever you want. This affects our life together, and you decided on your own." Thomas sounded upset. Surely if we had talked about it, we might have decided to move here together. But this assignment in Italy was like a reward for my hard work. Thomas was the one who got upset about the bonus and didn't listen to other things. Yet didn't it feel strange for him to say he decided on his own to live with Betty and Lisa? His own words were coming back to him. "Did you even discuss anything with me that affects our life together?" I questioned. "Well, I'll be working here and I'll return to the States as a manager in 2 years. Until then, enjoy life with Betty and her family," I concluded before hanging up. Thomas must be feeling uneasy now, his own actions and words preventing him from living abroad. A few days later, Thomas contacted me, wondering what it was about. I answered, and he sounded cheerful. "Guess where I am?" "I don't care. I'm working. I'm hanging up," I replied dismissively. "Believe it or not, I'm in front of your condo," he said. "Huh?" I was surprised by his words. He had called my work to get my address, claiming it was necessary for some procedures, and using that address, he had come over on his own. "What about your work?" I asked. "I took some time off and yep, I'm here too," said Betty's voice over the phone. Why she had come too was beyond me. I was exasperated. "So we're both waiting out here. Hurry home," said Thomas. "Both? What about Lisa?" "Lisa has a test, so she couldn't come," Betty said casually, leaving me astonished once again. "Is that so? But I won't be returning today. I have a dinner meeting far away," I replied. Even if they had contacted me earlier, I wasn't in the mood to entertain them on such short notice. I had a social gathering with another company and had no plans to go home. "Huh? What should we do?" Thomas sounded panicked, but that wasn't my concern. "Stay at a hotel or something. Anyway, that's the situation. Also, I'm in the middle of work. Bye." I hung up the phone. They might be causing a commotion, but I didn't have time for it. They would probably give up and look for a hotel. However, I had underestimated the situation. In the middle of the social gathering, my phone rang. I excused myself and answered the phone, puzzled by the unfamiliar number. It turned out to be from the police. Excuse me, but apparently there was an intruder at my house, looking for an open window. They found one in the pet door. I didn't own a pet, so I hadn't noticed it before, but the house built by my company had one. Of course, I had no idea it even existed, so it wasn't locked. The intruder tried to enter through it and got stuck, unable to move forward or back, and was spotted by a passerby who then called the police. What a foolish burglar. Encountering such a fool could be dangerous. I was relieved I wasn't home at the time. "The person claims to be your sister. Do you know anything about this?" I went pale at those words. "Sister? I don't have a sister." The only possibility was Thomas's sister, Betty. As expected, the police mentioned her name. I was mortified. Unbelievable that she tried to force her way through such a small entrance. It made family relations embarrassing. "Anna, help me. Come pick me up." I could hear Betty causing a scene over the phone. What a nuisance. Although I could have gone to pick her up, I told the police, she may be my sister-in-law, but I can't forgive her for trying to break it in my house. Please thoroughly investigate what she intended to do in my home. The police responded to my complaint, and Betty was severely reprimanded. However, due to her lack of Italian language skills, there was a lot of confusion and stress, which made her break down crying. "You must not cause trouble for your sister anymore," a police officer told her in simple English. Okay, Betty tearfully repeated. Getting caught by the police in Italy must have been a good lesson for her. Out of a desire for her to truly reflect, I didn't go to pick her up on the day she contacted me. The next day, thinking she might have reflected, I went to pick her up, and Betty broke down crying in relief. At that moment, I wondered, where was Thomas during all this? Only Betty was caught. Thomas was likely relaxing in a hotel, which I hadn't really considered. It turned out that while Betty was being arrested, Thomas was enjoying a meal alone, thinking Betty would bring money from my house and spending extravagantly at a restaurant. Oblivious to Betty's arrest, he ended up getting drunk and falling asleep at the restaurant. The restaurant, concerned about Thomas not responding, called the police, and he woke up in an unfamiliar police station. However, since my house and the restaurant were in different areas, Thomas was taken to a different police station. My wallet, my passport, where's my phone? Unfortunately, while he was unconscious, his bag was stolen, and he lost his wallet, passport, and phone. Thomas couldn't speak Italian and was arrested for dining and dashing, unable to seek assistance and ending up in police custody. I only realized Thomas was missing after Betty was released and asked about him. After learning the details and following Betty's account to the restaurant, I found out from the owner that Thomas had been taken by the police. When we visited the police station, Thomas, looking pale and emotional, broke down in tears when he heard our names. It felt like déjà vu. I explained the situation to the restaurant owner, settled the bill, and apologized. Despite the theft, the owner, feeling sympathetic towards Thomas, decided not to press charges for the dine and dash. However, what followed was a hassle. We had to go through procedures for the lost passport and contact the embassy because of Betty and Thomas. I couldn't focus on work for several days. Just when I was about to explode with frustration, Thomas casually remarked, "I thought everything was settled. I'm glad it worked out. Let's go back to Anna's place for now." Their nonchalant attitude infuriated me. Glad? This is not okay for me at all. After causing so much trouble, how can you call this a good outcome? "I'm sorry, but maybe it's best if you return to your own home and don't come here again." My outburst silenced them both. "I'm filing for divorce this weekend," I declared firmly. Thomas reacted with shock, and Betty stood beside him, equally taken aback, glancing between us. "There's no point in staying married to you." Betty moved in without asking, got arrested in Italy without knowing the language, and disrupted my work. It seemed they finally grasped the seriousness of my anger. With their heads down, they stayed silent, while onlookers chuckled at two adults being scolded by a woman. But my anger was far from subsiding. "So, I'm divorcing you. You don't have any objections, right?" I asserted, feeling entitled to live my life freely after rescuing him from the police. Thomas reluctantly agreed, reflecting on his actions, and responded quietly. Initially, Thomas had requested a 4-day leave from work, but due to his arrest and lost passport, he missed his return flight by a wide margin. Without a phone, he couldn't extend his leave and completely overlooked his work responsibilities. What's worse, he hadn't shared any information about his ongoing project, intending to take all the credit himself. His delayed return and lack of communication caused him to miss a crucial meeting, resulting in the cancellation of important deals with a client. Despite the significant losses incurred by the company, Thomas was fired. Betty, furious over this situation, had a heated argument with Thomas. Originally, Thomas quitting his job and moving in as a housekeeper resembled what happened. However, things took a turn with Thomas divorcing me and losing his job. With no income provider, our home became a place of frequent and intense arguments. Why? I understand all of this thanks to Lisa sharing details with me. "Children can't choose their parents, but if I could, I'd choose you over Mom," she told me. Divorcing Thomas meant that Lisa and I were no longer related by marriage, but she still reaches out to me for career advice and to discuss her mom, treating me like a sister. I'm glad she sees me that way. Even though we don't see each other often, I'm continuing to work in Italy. Originally, I planned to return to America after 2 years, but now I've decided to stay and continue working here. I've also developed a strong bond with a man I met locally. I'm ready to leave behind the difficult memories and the beautiful surroundings of Italy and pursue new happiness. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I shouted because there he was, lying in an old, worn-out tent in the yard under the blazing sun. It reminded me of the tents from my childhood. "Ah, don't worry about it. It's the usual thing," Dad replied weakly, leaving me speechless. Since he hurt his leg, he's been living with my brother and his wife. Whenever I called, my brother said Dad was fine, and his wife would laugh and say she was taking good care of him. They told me I couldn't talk to Dad because he wasn't good with technology and had made new friends at the hospital, so he was enjoying life. But seeing Dad lying there looking so weak, I realized my brother and his wife were lying. Dad slowly raised his hand and pointed toward a direction. I saw my home. I'm single and my parents' house is in the city, but I moved to the countryside to work at a resort hotel, chasing my dream. My parents had a car accident 2 years ago. Only Mom died, but Dad injured his leg and got really depressed after losing her. They were always together and known as a loving couple in the neighborhood. Dad liked staying home, but he would travel because Mom loved it. On the way back from one of their trips, they had the accident, and only Dad survived. "Why did I survive instead of her?" Dad would say, feeling guilty every day. His injury made him stay indoors even more. Since I was working, I couldn't take care of him as much as I wanted. Seeing him so sad made me feel terrible, but luckily I have a brother who is 7 years older than me. My brother Anthony and his wife, Mia, live close to our parents' home and would check on us sometimes. "Dad's gotten a lot weaker, hasn't he?" I said. They were a loving couple after all. "It's understandable. We live nearby, so Emma, don't worry and focus on your work," Anthony replied. "Thank you," I said, feeling grateful. Lately, I've been affected by the recession and my income has dropped a lot. I need to start saving soon. "How about you, Emma?" Anthony asked with a sigh. "I'm actually doing pretty well. Thanks to tourists coming back, I've been really busy lately. Unlike my brother, the overtime pay has helped a lot, so I haven't been struggling financially. In fact, I've had a raise and think I'm earning more than most of my peers. However, not having private time has been tough." This was the first time my brother had talked about his financial situation. He said they've had to cut back on food expenses and are barely getting by each day. He hasn't bought clothes in over a year, and they haven't gone on any trips either. They wanted children, but with their current situation, it's not possible. I was worried they were really struggling. Then, during a conversation at his house, Anthony mentioned, "Dad's leg has gotten much worse, and he needs more support. We're thinking about living together so we can take care of him." Mia added, "We were thinking it would save us money, and we could take care of Dad at the same time." "I appreciate it. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help," I said gratefully. "Thank you, Emma. Good luck with your work," Maya replied warmly. So to save money and look after Dad, my brother and his wife decided to move in with him. Dad and my brother didn't have the best relationship to start with. When Anthony was a student, he used to come home late, and Dad would often scold him. Over time, they drifted apart, and after Anthony finished college, he rarely visited. I hadn't seen them talk much since Anthony became an adult, so it was surprising that he was now positive about living with Dad. It seemed clear they were facing financial difficulties. The idea of saving on rent and living costs made sense, especially since I, living alone, understood the appeal. But I couldn't help feeling anxious about whether they would truly take good care of Dad, especially since I couldn't visit home often due to work. I regularly called Anthony instead. "Hey Anthony, how's Dad doing?" "He's been smiling more these days. I feel bad leaving all the caregiving to you. It must be tough. It's been 3 months now, and we've adjusted to living together." At first I was worried, but it seemed my brother and his wife were committed to taking care of Dad, so I could focus on my work without worries. Several years passed, and after summer vacation ended, I decided to visit my hometown for the first time in a while. I called Anthony beforehand to let them know I was coming. "Hey Anthony, it's been a while." "Oh, it has been. How are you? Think you'll be able to come home this year?" Anthony asked cheerfully. "Yeah, things have settled down at work, so I'm planning to come home for a few days," I replied. "That's great to hear. Travel safely," he said. "Thanks. Please let Dad and Mia know I'm coming," I said before hanging up. I tried calling Dad too, but couldn't reach him. I let Anthony know and finally headed home for the first time in years. It was the longest I had been away since Mom passed away. I used to worry about Dad and tried to visit during holidays, but I hadn't been able to in a long time. Knowing Anthony and Mia were there gave me some comfort. The city home felt much hotter than where I lived. As I arrived, sweating from the heat, I noticed an unfamiliar old tent in the front yard. Was there really a tent? I wondered aloud, puzzled by its presence. Curious yet apprehensive, I approached it and sensed someone inside. Hurriedly, I made my way in the family home. "I'm back," I announced. "Welcome back, Emma. You look pale." "What's wrong?" Mia exclaimed, noticing my expression. "I think there's someone in the tent," I blurted out hastily to Mia, who had just welcomed me home. Her response caught me off guard. "Oh, that's Dad," Mia replied calmly. "What? Dad is in that tent on such a hot day?" I exclaimed, rushing to check inside. There I found Dad lying down, looking like he had collapsed. "Mia, I'm calling an ambulance. Dad seems exhausted," I said urgently. "No need to call an ambulance," Mia insisted firmly. "It's Dad's choice to live in the garden. There's nothing to worry about," she added, sounding resolute. Dad looked fatigued on such a hot day, yet he wants to live in the garden. The man who preferred being indoors even when Mom was healthy. Dad always said the best place in summer was a cool room and a warm one in winter. It didn't make sense for him to want to be outside in this heat. Something felt wrong. An uneasy feeling crept over me. I hurried to the tent where Dad was and spoke to him directly. "Dad, what happened? Are you okay?" I asked with concern. "Emma, it's nothing. Just the usual. I'm fine," Dad replied weakly. "Do you stay out here in this heat every day? Why don't you come inside?" When I pressed him, Dad pointed slowly towards the main house. "That used to be my room. Since I moved in with Anthony and Mia, I've been staying in a closet," Dad revealed, shocking me. "In a closet? I thought they were taking good care of you," I said, feeling bewildered and concerned. "Not once have they taken care of me properly. Their decision to live together was solely for their own savings," Dad revealed bitterly. "I've told them countless times how much I hate staying in the closet because of my leg," Dad continued. "Their response was to tell me if I didn't like it, I should live outside. That's why they'd left me out here in the garden with this old tent during this sweltering heat." Dad's words were a painful narrative I wished I could block out. It was now clear that there was discord between my brother and Dad. I blamed myself for trusting Anthony. Mia, too, was not the nurturing type I had hoped for. I recalled how Anthony used to complain about her frequent nights out drinking until the early hours. This couple, who boasted about dining out every single day and never cooking at home, were clearly ill-suited to taking care of Dad. Yet foolishly, I had expected more from them. "This is unacceptable. I'm here now, and I've got you," I declared firmly. It was shocking to uncover how badly they had treated Dad. Despite their assurances of good care over the phone, they had confined him to a closet and then banished him to the yard. Anger surged through me, unforgiving and intense. Ignoring Mia's protests, I dialed for an ambulance. "There's no need for that. Please, don't make a scene," my brother's wife pleaded desperately, but I paid no heed. When the ambulance arrived, they took Dad to the hospital, and I accompanied him. Dad was on the brink of heat stroke, but thankfully it wasn't life-threatening. However, due to neglect in providing proper meals and maintaining hygiene, he needed hospitalization. "Dad, rest now. Take your time to recover," I reassured him as he settled in. Then he replied, "Emma, you're my lifesaver. I was ready to join your mom every day." He looked relieved. "What are you saying? We need you here with us for much longer." Realizing Dad had been living each day as if it were his last, tears welled up in my eyes, but I kept a smile on my face for him. I returned to the family home to gather some things for Dad's hospital stay. Anthony, Mia, you need to explain yourselves about Dad. I confronted my brother and his wife, seething with anger about how Dad had been treated. We were just trying to push him away, hoping he'd leave on his own, Mia confessed casually. Yeah, surprisingly he was stubborn and wouldn't leave, Anthony said casually, almost as if it were a joke. It was clear they knew they had treated Dad cruelly. They chuckled as they recounted their attempts to push him away. Are you even hearing yourselves? Dad's life is at stake here. If anything had happened to him, you could have been held responsible, I exclaimed, unable to contain my disbelief and anger. You're exaggerating. We did give him food and checked on him once a day, Anthony replied dismissively, as if Dad was just some animal they were dealing with. He's in the hospital now because he wasn't properly cared for. Do you understand what you've done? It's outrageous to kick him out of his own home, I retorted, frustration evident in my voice. My brother and his wife showed no remorse and started making excuses for their actions. We didn't choose to live here. Financial struggles forced us to move in, but caregiving turned out to be much harder than we expected, Mia explained. That's why we considered placing him in a facility, but Dad strongly opposed leaving this house full of memories of Mom. He even tried to kick us out. They pleaded to me, casting themselves as victims. They struggled with caregiving and attempted to convince Dad to leave, but instead, they found themselves on the brink of being forced out. Having rent-free accommodation is crucial for us, so we couldn't let Dad kick us out, Anthony justified their actions. I never imagined my brother would stoop so low as to deliberately worsen Dad's care and quality of life just to secure the house for himself. Despite Dad and my brother not being close, I had trusted that as an adult in his mid-30s, he would manage Dad's care responsibly. It was terrifying to realize they had devised such a cruel strategy. Moreover, my brother confessed that by confining Dad to the closet or forcing him into the yard when I visited, they were trying to manipulate Dad into choosing to live with me instead. Living in the countryside is better for his health anyway, so we were planning to send him to live with you, my brother admitted. We thought he'd leave on his own before you got here, but he held on, Mia chuckled, as if reminiscing about a challenging game. Now that you're back, Dad will probably say he wants to live with you, Anthony laughed, casually dropping this bombshell. Then he said something outrageous. Now that Dad's in the hospital, this house belongs to us, so pack your things and leave. I was so appalled by his audacity that I was at a loss for words. To think he could say such a thing while living in someone else's house. I gathered Dad's belongings and went back to the hospital. Dad, I heard about what happened from Anthony. It must have been tough, I said gently. Dad sighed, expressing his despair. Trying to drive them out of the house backfired on me. That house is a treasure filled with memories of your mom. I couldn't just hand it over to people like them. His enduring love for Mom still gave him strength, which was reassuring. Don't worry, Dad. We'll figure this out together. You're not alone in this, I reassured him, determined to make things right for him. Don't worry about the house. We'll figure something out. You might need to stay in the hospital for a bit longer, but would you like to live with me after you're discharged? I suggested. Dad's face lit up with relief. Thank you. If you're okay with it, I'd be happy to live together. After Dad agreed to live with me, I returned to my place. 2 months later, I started receiving a barrage of calls from Anthony. There are a bunch of unknown men in the house. What's going on? Anthony demanded furiously. Without replying, I handed the phone to someone else. The person who took over was our maternal grandfather. Hey, Anthony, I've heard the story from Emma. You've done something terrible to my dear son-in-law. When grandfather spoke, Anthony sounded shocked. Our family home was actually built by grandfather as a wedding gift for Mom when she was young. Dad, who was adopted into the family, was always treated by grandfather as if he were his own son. When I told grandfather about the situation, he was furious and sent over some of his strongest apprentices to drive out my brother and his wife. After the commotion, I called grandfather, who owns the land and the house. Grandfather has always been imposing, and Anthony has always been afraid of him. I believed he could help us out of this mess. Anthony, all your stuff has been arranged to be sent to Mia's parents' house, grandfather said firmly. Don't just go ahead with things on your own, Anthony protested, though his voice was tinged with fear. You're the one who acted out of line. Now deal with the consequences, grandfather retorted sharply. A person who treated their family like that has no right to argue. Do you have any complaints? Grandfather said firmly. No, sir. I'm sorry, Anthony replied and didn't argue back. After that, grandfather was always kind to me but very strict with Anthony as he grew up. If Anthony cried, grandfather would spank him, which made him cry more and get scolded even more. What was okay in the past is now considered wrong. Watching Anthony, I often felt glad to be a girl. Even though Anthony would rebel against Dad, he never dared to go against Grandfather. This time too, he tried to resist a little, but Grandfather quickly took control, showing that my brother couldn't match him. Anthony and Mia's belongings were sent to Mia's parents' house as Grandfather had arranged. When they arrived, it was clear they hadn't been there in a long time. "Hey Dad, I think our stuff has arrived, so we came to pick it up," Mia said. Mia's dad came out from the back room. "I've heard everything from Anthony's sister. You two are going to live with us from now on." "It's okay, we'll live at my family home," Mia replied. "Don't even think about coming back after treating your father like that." "I'll fix your bad attitude," Mia's dad said angrily. I had heard that Mia's dad was very strict. After explaining everything to him, Anthony and Mia had no choice but to live under his strict rules. Mia learned to cook from scratch and had to prepare meals for the family every day. Anthony got permission for a side job and helped Mia's dad with his work on weekends. After Dad was discharged from the hospital, Grandfather told him the house needed repairs because of some damage. Determined to fix the house filled with memories of Mom, Dad committed himself to rehabilitation and recovered impressively. "You did great with the rehab. The doctors were even surprised by how quickly you recovered," I said. "Of course, it's the house filled with memories of your mom, so I need to put my all into fixing it," Dad replied with a brightness in his voice like in the old days. It seemed his love for Mom helped Dad recover. With Grandfather's instructions and the help of his apprentices, we gradually repaired the house. While fixing the house, Dad seemed to regain the sparkle he had when Mom was alive. "You seem really lively," I said. "Working on the house brings back a lot of memories, and it feels like I'm talking to your mom. I felt like she had gone far away, but maybe she's been nearby all along, watching over me." Hearing Dad talk like that almost brought tears to my eyes. Despite the horrible treatment from my brother and his wife, maybe Mom really was protecting him. Eventually, the house repairs were completed. When the repairs were done, Dad decided to let go of the house. "Dad, are you sure?" I felt like Mom said it's okay not to cling to this house anymore. Plus, now that it's so beautifully done, I really want someone to live in it, he spoke calmly. "I see. I think she would be happy too." Thanks to the renovations Dad and the team made, a buyer was quickly found. Because of all this, Dad and Grandfather decided to move into nursing homes. I've started visiting more often. "Dad, how are you?" "I'm having a great time every day. Made a lot of friends too." "It's all thanks to you, Emma." "Really, thank you," Dad said with a smile. Dad seemed to be enjoying his days with the other residents, making the time I spent with him even more precious. I've been living more peacefully every day. As for Anthony and Mia, we've gotten used to Dad's discipline, and it's quite comfortable this way, Mia said. "Yeah, he's not strict all the time, and the house is big." "It's great," Anthony added, seeming to enjoy their lifestyle too. "Being relieved from caregiving, we're actually lucky," Mia said happily. "Thanks to this, we're living a good life despite our low income. I feel so grateful." My brother and his wife had adjusted to living at Mia's parents' house and were happy to be free from caregiving responsibilities, showing no signs of regret. But then Mia's dad, furious at their lack of remorse, kicked them out. "There's no remorse from you, so you might as well leave," Mia's dad said quietly yet angrily. "Pack your things and leave immediately." He expelled them without allowing any discussion. Accustomed to living at home without saving money, they found themselves homeless and desperate. Until they could afford the initial costs for a new place, they lived in an old tent in the park during winter. "It's freezing. We're in this situation because your income is so low," Mia blamed Anthony. "The tent is from home, but I bought you a new sleeping bag, so stop complaining." "I've been working 7 days a week without a break," Anthony retorted irritably. With the money from his side job already spent, they had nothing left. "How about we contact Emma and ask if we can live with her in the countryside?" Anthony suggested without much concern. Soon after, Anthony called to inform me they had been kicked out of Mia's parents' house and were now sleeping in a cold park. My brother, who had previously made fun of my rural lifestyle, was now pleading to live with me. Knowing how badly he treated our father, I couldn't bring myself to help him, so I refused. I decided to block all future communications to avoid any further trouble. I can only hope they realize that their actions have consequences.